Okay, Chair Fleming, I believe we have all of our panelists. So we're ready to start when you are ready.
Great, thank you. Hold on one moment, please, and I'll bring us to order. Well, I pull up the script here. Hello and welcome to the February 8th meeting of the Public Safety Subcommittee. I would like to bring this meeting to order and ask, turn it over to the clerk for notes on translation.
I need to take roll call first.
Okay, it has the notes ahead of roll call. I'd like to ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Schwedhelm?
Here.
Vice Mayor Rogers?
Present.
Councilmember Fleming?
Here.
Thank you. All members, let the record show members are present.
Okay, would you please then move on to the reconvening points?
Thank you, Chair. Interpreter services are being provided in Spanish for today's meeting. For those just joining the meeting, live translation in Spanish is available for members wishing to listen in Spanish, can join the Spanish channel. To do so, click on the interpretation icon in Zoom tool bar. It looks like a globe. Once you join the Spanish channel, we recommend you shut off the main audio so you only hear the Spanish translation. And Interpreter Pablo, if you can translate that into Spanish for us, please.
Para los que recién se unen a la reunión, interpretación en vivo en español está disponible y los miembros que deseen escuchar en español pueden unirse en el canal de español. Para hacerlo, haga clic en el icono de interpretación en la barra de herramientas de Zoom. Parece un globo terráqueo. Una vez que se una al canal en español, le recomendamos que apague el audio principal para que solo escuche la interpretación al español.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the interpreter currently on the Spanish channel to commence translation of the meeting. Live translation can be heard on the Spanish channel. To join the Spanish channel, click on the interpretation icon at the bottom.
Me gustaría pedirle al intérprete que se encuentra actualmente en el canal en español que comience la traducción de la reunión. La interpretación en vivo se puede escuchar en el canal en español. Para unirse al canal en español, haga clic en el icono de interpretación en la barra de herramientas de Zoom.
Thank you. Chair Fleming, back to you for additional housekeeping items for today's meeting.
Yes, thank you. One moment, please, while I pull them up. So as a reminder to the committee members, please keep your audio on mute unless you're speaking, and staff will remain muted until needing to speak. As members of the public can join the meeting, you will be participating as an attendee. Your microphone and camera will be muted. Only today's panelists will be viewed during the meeting. If you are calling from a telephone and choose to speak during public comment portion of today's agenda, for privacy concerns, the host will be renaming your viewable phone to resident and the last 4 digits of your phone number. The City of Santa Rosa is committed to providing a safe, inclusive environment free from disruption and will not tolerate any hateful speech or actions, and are well staffed to monitor that everyone is participating respectfully or they will be removed from this meeting. If necessary, we will also immediately end the meeting. Madam Clerk, could you please explain how public comments will be heard in today's meeting?
Yes, thank you. After each agenda item is presented, the chair will ask for committee comments and then open it up for public comment. The host in Zoom will be lowering all hands until public comment is open for the agenda item. Once the chair has called for public comment, the chair will announce for the public to raise their hand if they wish to speak on a specific agenda item. If you are calling in to listen to the meeting audibly, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. The chair will then call on the public who have raised their hands. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes, and a timer will appear on screen for the committee and public to see. Once all live comments have been heard, the meeting host will play voicemail public comments. If you provide a live public comment on an agenda item, but also submitted an email or a recorded voice message public comment, your email or voice message public comment will not be duplicated, read, or played during the meeting. Throughout today's agenda, when the chair calls for public comment, an interpreter will be prepared to assist anyone needing interpretation. Those using interpreter support will be afforded additional time for your public comment as required by the Brown Act. We ask that those listening on the Spanish channel but wishing to make a public comment turn off or leave the interpretation entirely at the time you hear your name called so you can join the main channel to make your public comment heard and translated into English. The icon may now look like a circle with an ES in the middle and the word Spanish underneath. You can then rejoin the Spanish channel at the conclusion of your comment to continue listening in Spanish.
Thank you very much. And now we have announcements. Are there any announcements from the panelists? Seeing none, Sue, is this a okay time to make an announcement about reordering the agenda?
Yes, this would be an appropriate time.
Okay. So it's my understanding that Vice Mayor Rogers has a hard out at 3 p.m. today. Does anybody else have a ending time? Okay. I have to leave around 3:30. So given that we have limited time and the relative importance of the police auditor position, if this committee deems it appropriate, I would like to move that item to be the first item of business and then take all of the other items in the order which they are set forth in the agenda. What say you, committee?
I'm good with it. And this is probably a question for the city attorney. Is this a brand new subcommittee meeting or continuation from the last meeting? Because if it's a continuation from the last meeting, the next thing we'd be talking about is item 5.1.
It is my understanding that the meeting, I would have to look back at my notes, but it's my understanding that the last meeting was not formally continued to today, so that it is a new meeting. So But going forward, anytime that you want to just continue it, it would be announced at the end of the meeting as a continuance rather than an adjournment of the meeting to start again.
Great, thank you. So I'm fine with the reorder that you suggested.
Okay, I'll need a motion in a second, please.
I'll make a motion that first item, we reprioritize or agendize and have first item for discussion, item 5.1, police auditor.
Okay, second. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Schwedhelm.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rogers.
Aye.
Chair Fleming.
Aye. Excellent. So now we will commence with item 5.1, police auditor.
Thank you, Chair Fleming. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Vice Mayor Rogers and Councilmember Schwedhelm. We have two items on the agenda today. The first one is police auditor, and we have one slide to share for you on that. The police auditor was a position that we had in place, the city had in place for about 4 years between 2014 and 2018. The police auditor was a position that was beneficial in helping us create and implement our professional standards team, which we've had in place since 2015. The police auditor provided several advantages for us. It included ongoing audits of our police department policies, practices, and records. It was provided full access to body-worn camera footages and reports related to calls for service. So there were no restrictions as to what the police auditor could look at. The police auditor in the past had the ability to conduct independent investigations. And again, let me go back real quick. So this is more of an idea or an example of what the scope was back when we had the auditor. And so these are some of the things that were in place at the time. Again, we had they had the ability to conduct the independent investigations. We use the auditor to be able to address allegations of employee misconduct and use of force. So, for example, any allegations that would have come from the community, they could reach out to the police auditor and begin an investigation that way. Or if there was something that was seen or came through internally, the police auditor was there to assist and help address those allegations. Again, the auditor was available to respond to and assist with complaints from the community. So that was, it worked in two ways. Number one, the auditor provided both email and phone numbers for the community to respond to. And then the auditor had the ability to proactively reach out to community members and community groups to check in and basically find out if there's anything of issue that should be brought forward. The auditor was always apprised of critical incidents. So if we had a significant issue, whether it was a shooting or another significant event, the auditor was available for an immediate contact and let them know what was going on. So they would be up to that position would be up to speed immediately. Again, they could have regular meetings and contacts with the community stakeholders, and had the option of creating their own, meetings, whether it was one-on-one or with groups. The police auditor was or reported directly to the city manager and assisted the chief's position and the police department with being more transparent, accountable, and responsible. The police auditor in the past had or did submit reports, or was required through the contract to submit reports to the city manager and city council on a regular basis to assist with that transparency. And those reports help us also to continue to improve and enhance our service to the community. The city currently does not have a police auditor. It's been out of contract with one for a few years now. The city decided not to renew the last contract. The city is currently in the middle of community empowerment plan meetings, and we're waiting for feedback from the community. So we are currently without an auditor. We are looking to we're looking for more information on moving forward, and we wanted to give you a quick update on where we were. Both myself and Captain Eric Litchfield, who has been in charge of our professional standards team over the last several years, are available for any questions that you might have. And that is the end of our presentation.
Thank you, Chief Navarro. I'll open this up to the panel. Who would like to go first for questions? Do we have any questions? Okay, I have some questions. One is, can you give some background on why this position was not refilled after it was terminated?
The contract expired, and this was a few years ago, and the city council at the time decided not to renew the contract.
Was that through a formal action, or was it just as it was just allowed to go by the wayside?
Yes. So the auditor, the contract expired, and it was not renewed, and so and we have been in the process. Again, there was at the time we were getting ready for the retirement of the chief, and then my position coming up. And there were some changes, and since then we've had several emergencies, and there's been some capacity issues from the city, but we are currently, again, we are currently in the process of looking to see what the direction is from this particular from this particular subcommittee moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor Rogers. I see that your hand is up.
Hi, thank you. So, Chief, it continues to be a line item in the budget where monies are allocated for that position?
Yes, so the money it's funded through the police department, but it reports directly to the city manager's office. And we have not used the general fund to pay for this. We've been paying for it through, I believe, our some crime mitigation money that we had received in the past.
Okay, thank you. Any other further questions, panel? Okie dokie. Well, I'd like to open this up for public comment. And I see a couple of hands raised. I'll call them in the order in which they appear to me. Our first caller today is Samra. Samra, are you there?
Hey, I'm here.
Hi. Please go ahead.
Okay, so I want to further elaborate on what Victoria Fleming said. She asked why you guys didn't renew the independent auditor position. It's been 3 years after all. 3 years where you fully knew that there was bias in the reports and that they would continue to go unchecked. But none of you did anything. And especially you, Navarro, if you knew about this and you didn't push for it, then how is that just? Or how is that, or I guess, having the mentality of seeking justice? It doesn't exactly, you didn't actually answer the question. You just said it didn't happen. But you didn't give a reason as to why. This position, it expired and you guys didn't renew the contract. Why didn't you renew the contract? Was there a specific reason? And why didn't you seek for another one ASAP? It's been 3 years. What form of how is this auditing? How is this caring about the community? And on that note, if the police auditor now that you get is sponsored, or like their salary comes out of the police budget, then that creates incentive to keep the police budget as it is, or it keeps incentive to like have them tied to the police, which doesn't necessarily seem fair, because if they're supposed to audit the police but their salary comes from the police, it's a conflict of interests. So that should definitely change. My main problem comes from the lack of transparency from you. Not saying that, not giving us a reason as to why you got rid of the auditor, not bringing forth another auditor, even though it's been 3 years. And I believe that this auditor, if it's an individual, they're still subject to their own bias. So I believe that it'd be very important for you guys to have a community-like board checking in on them, or working in like conjunction with them. Because if they are, subject to their own bias, it's still just one person. It'd be important. It'd be genuinely important. The police force is made up of more than one person, but the auditor would just be an individual. It'd be very helpful if there was like, I don't know if you have it in the budget, to like have like maybe a group of auditors, or especially have like a community board just checking in on the auditor, or being able to like, have connections. If there's a problem, like if there is say that like, the auditor needs to check in with individuals, they can potentially, provide resources, or, provide like, helpful information, discussion, and basically keep the auditor from, falling into their own bias. That would be very, very helpful. And it's the least you can do after keeping us, without an auditor for 3 years. I can't even understand why you did that. Almost seems like you want to protect the police. So I get rid of the rest of my time.
Thank you. Evan, followed by Susan.
I believe I'm ready if you can hear me.
Yep, go for it.
All right, thank you for the time. I think should have to go without saying, but I guess not. It probably should be said a lot. I guess the opposite. The length of time the lapse in this role exposes a few things, instead of getting from like some of like other maybe insinuated attacks on departments. I think at the very least it's shown that administratively the process in which the hiring is taking place for the auditor is not something that should fall under the purview of the police department. And then obviously, additionally, there's really no credibility to an auditing program that would have this sort of connection to the police department at all. Obviously, there needs to be some sort of working relationship and professional rapport there, but that sort of defeats the purpose of an auditor. So what I'm really like to reemphasize the same points that were made before me along those lines, but then also request that the Public Safety Committee, that this committee make an actual formal recommendation to the whole council to adopt a civilian oversight committee that does work in conjunction with the auditor. But, you've just seen a local mandate, about a 2/3 vote for Measure P passing on the county level. And the time and the window for this, I don't understand why it's taking so long, and we don't need an act of local votes. You already know what the landscape is. So it's in addition to actually bringing on this auditor much sooner than this whole thing is, it should have already happened. So it needs to happen. Obviously, got to get the right hire. So you don't necessarily have to rush the candidacy, but obviously we need one. But what we really need is a much larger effort, something that it does work more in the veins of something like ILARO, but for the city. So I also hope that the timing of this was never intentional. There's sort of been like this kind of punting and keep kicking it down regarding the Human Rights Commission and their report, which obviously would directly tie. And I know that there's an independent investigation going on with an after action report related to that. But I mean, I don't know how many different signs you need to see from both what's actually happening in reality as well as community sentiment that this auditor needs to happen rapidly. And you actually need to go much further in this committee. I really hope you make the formal recommendation for an actual civilian oversight committee that is empowered with authority. And I'll yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan, followed by Lee.
Susan Lamont, 30-year resident of Santa Rosa and longtime law enforcement accountability activist. More than 2 years ago, the members of the Santa Rosa City Council fired police auditor Bob Aronson. Technically, it didn't renew his contract because he dared to lay bare the lack of a homeless policy in the city and its detrimental effects on the morale of local police officers. Aronson made the city council a bit too uncomfortable. In the intervening years, despite the agitation here and around the country for local community oversight of law enforcement, Santa Rosa has delayed committing itself to such oversight. The auditor model is a flawed model. Aronson was allowed to, but not required to, reach out to the community, but he did so because he personally believed in it. We activists knew what was happening because Bob met with us. He predicted that he would lose his job over the no homeless policy police morale issue. Santa Rosa needs community oversight of its police force, and it doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. The National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, NACOL, lays it all out. They explain exactly what policies and principles are needed for effective oversight. Most important is extensive involvement by the community, including a community board. And to make that a reality, whoever runs the agency must be committed to working with the community even when it is uncomfortable. It is time for this city to commit to this and to give it more than lip service. The resources and principles are out there. The only thing we need now is the political will. And I'll note that just the other day, Police Chief Navarro said exactly what Aronson said. That problem still festers, homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee, followed by Cecilia.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Hi, thank you for listening today. Hearing that our city representatives have not chosen to have an independent auditor for the last 3 years and considering the human rights violations reported this summer is very concerning. The overwhelming support of Measure P and the change we are seeing all over the country should indicate to you, our current representatives, that the time is now for complete independent oversight. I don't have much to add besides what other people have spoken about. One of the things I just heard from the previous speaker was there's no need to reinvent the wheel. And we know that is true. We see it all over the country. These independent oversight and transparency is being demanded by the constituents of local representatives. And that's happening here now. And we are asking you once again to consider the human rights violations report, the transparency requested by people from all over the country, and the overwhelming support of Measure P right here at home. And again, the time is now. Thank you so much, and I yield my time.
Thank you. Cecilia, followed by Allegra.
Hi, my name is Cecilia. I've been a resident of Sonoma County for over 20 years. I wanted to voice my strong support for an oversight committee, an auditor, anything to displace the incredible imbalance of power that we have going on across the nation, across the world, and especially here in Santa Rosa. Being involved in the activist movement over the past year has shown me a significant amount of what is actually going on in my home county. And as a white person, I'm ashamed to say that I did not know much of it. But as we've seen, and as you have heard from many people calling in meeting after meeting, taking time out of our days to try to make our voices heard, we are asking you to please change things, change them. We've asked over and over again. We will continue to ask. We are passionate and strongly, fiercely sure that the power imbalance is not correct. It is not okay for police, for cops, for law enforcement officials to continuously use the power given to them by the government and by our society and our system to continue to harm people. There's so much harm that's happened. There's so many lives that has been lost. I think the only reason why this isn't happening faster is because maybe none of you have experienced the loss of somebody or the hardship that happens when you know someone who's been harmed by the police and by the system. Please listen to the voices that are calling in today, that have called in for many, many months now, as we ask you to take the power away from the police, take some of this power away, because they should not be able to get away with everything that they're able to do. Please get an auditor in here. This is negligence. It's harming the people of Santa Rosa. Please hear me again. This is negligence. It is harming the people of Santa Rosa. Please keep us safe. And please consider getting an oversight committee, listening, reading the human rights report. You have to get that out there. There's some really important information in there. Please listen to the people. Thank you so much today. I yield my time.
Thank you. Allegra, followed by Libs.
Hi, good afternoon. I just want to echo basically what others have already said, but add my voice. I question why this position was vacant for so long. I think what I heard Navarro say was that the funding has been in the budget. So I wonder about where that money has been going during this gap. I also, again, you guys have heard other people say it, but I would hope to see anyone in this position and even before you're able to hire this position, a public review of the Human Rights Commission report. We can see the need for this police auditor position because there are these homeless sweeps going on against CDC recommendations, violence taken against protesters, including minors over the summer, and other things that we likely don't even really know about because they aren't coming to light. And that's really scary to me. Like, what don't we know about if these are the things that we have seen? I would like to see this position filled as soon as possible. I would like to see them be fully independent and not linked to the police department, but having the ability to subpoena the records and have funding committed to enable them to do the work that they need to do, including any positions that are needed for support. I would like to see this funding taken directly from the police budget and moved to support these efforts. So again, there's not that conflict of interest, that link. And I also wonder if there might be a way for including a community advisory board, and to see if these teams can work with the new CAHOOTS team so that oversight committee can make sure that the CAHOOTS team needs are supported, and if they can identify additional tasks that have been done by the police for the CAHOOTS team to do instead as a more social model, a less punitive model. So that's kind of what I have to say. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Liz, followed by Melissa.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. Thanks for having this meeting today. I'm glad that we're talking about this auditor position, but I do take issue with the fact that there's only one person that is supposed to have this position. With the amount of bias that one person can have, I think it's more advantageous and much more honest to have a community-formed board of auditors, to be completely honest. And if you want to avoid that conflict of interest, the person, if it's only going to be one person, should not be really involved with the police. That money should come from elsewhere to avoid that conflict of interest. The fact that you haven't had an auditor at all in 3 years looks really bad to the community. Like, it looks bad for you, it looks bad to us. Not having that position filled means we really can't trust you to have our best interest in mind. If you want to repair your relationship with the public, then be transparent about what's going on and actually listen to what we're saying. Same to the other people that were talking before me. They all have amazing points that you should be listening to and taking very seriously. And again, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like a previous speaker said, these structures exist. We just have to commit to them. If we want to see something better, we have to commit to these alternative, new, like anti-racist, anti-white supremacist processes, you know? Like, we can't just keep using the same forces over and over and over, except to expect something different. It's just not going to happen. So again, if you're going to have an auditor, make sure it's a group of people and make sure it's community formed and community led, because frankly, I don't trust the city council except for Natalie Rogers. I don't trust the rest of y'all to have somebody that's on there that's not good. I don't trust y'all to have someone on there that's not going to be related to the cops, because they've already gotten away with a bunch of other stuff the past 3 years and even more when we had one before. So do this right, please. And before you do any of that, make time to read the human rights report as soon as possible. I'm talking next week or even earlier if you can, because frankly, that's been pushed off for way too long and people have been talking about it for months. And at this point, it really seems like you're just trying not to talk about it. And that's a huge issue. So listen to what other people are saying. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Kelsey, followed by Jerry.
Hi, can you hear me?
Barely.
Oh, hi. Sorry, my microphone's not so great. How about now?
Still pretty muffled. Can you get a little closer?
Yeah. Well, I'll do my best here and with the computer. I just want to amplify what other people have been saying, that the vacant auditor position is really alarming, and not only is it bad, but it also looks really bad. In other words, to have the community involved in trying to track down what is happening with a kind of oversight we already have, what is happening with it, who is in control of it, and where have our elected officials been during this process when oversight was left empty, that what little we have. Basically, we have the fox guarding the hen house in that situation. And especially as others have mentioned, the overwhelming support for Measure P shows the direction in terms of the community support for effective and community-based oversight and putting more resources into that and having more transparency. And I think a lot of folks who aren't very involved really have no idea about this other position and have limited understanding of the difference between the county and the city situation. I'm assuming a lot of folks think that Measure P has covered all of it, and it really hasn't. So need some clarity, need more people in the actual positions, and we can't figure out what to do differently in the future if we can't even understand clearly what has already been happening. So yeah, we're watching to see those changes be made, especially when there's been so much conversation around trust while this position has been purposefully left vacant. And I yield the rest of my time. Thanks.
Thank you. Jerry, followed by Michael.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Jerry Three. I'm an attorney and consultant on police accountability and civilian oversight issues here in the county. I was the founding director of ILEROS, the Civilian Oversight Office for the Sheriff's Office, and was involved in the passage of Measure P this last November. And I'm the current chair of the Commission on Human Rights for the county. There's no question in my mind that Santa Rosa should hire a new police auditor and once again engage with civilian oversight of its police department after a pause of several years. In my opinion, it's really confusing and hard to understand that the city has waited this long to replace its police auditor, as that position would have played a key role in recent controversies like the Black Lives Matter protest policing and the thin blue line flag controversy that's currently in front of you today. As well as the question on many people's minds after the Capitol insurrection, which is, are any members of our local police departments associated with white supremacist or extremist groups? So given the clear public sentiment for effective civilian oversight of your police department, this is really an opportune moment to ensure you get it right. Yes, please hire a new police auditor, but also make sure that the auditor model actually delivers on increased accountability and transparency, and that its primary purpose is to serve the community. The last auditor model was set up as an internal department coaching function, where the auditor gave feedback directly to officers on particular incidents, but never reported out to the public what he found about those incidents. The auditor should be independent of the police department and the chief, report directly to the council, publish public reports on findings about individual investigations and on the general internal affairs system of the department, and be able to audit systemic issues within the department wherever they see it. And they should also have unfettered direct access to police staff and records. More important, from my perspective, an auditor is not enough. Santa Rosa needs to add a community advisory committee to complement the work of the police auditor. A group of community members representative of the true diversity of the city, but predominantly BIPOC community members, is essential to facilitate engagement between the community and the police department. Such a body can bring the voice of the community into the process by which the council and SRPD decides when and how to police their communities. Community involvement in these decisions is a key part of and provides legitimacy to community policing. The best way to achieve that community involvement is by formalizing it with a community review panel of some kind. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you. Michael, followed by Noah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I am out speaking in favor of filling this position, but really strongly asking for stronger community oversight of the Santa Rosa Police Department. Not only because of the incidents we've seen with officer abuse, especially of protesters this summer, but of the numerous raids of homeless encampments that are going to be carried out. And there's one that I understand is scheduled for tomorrow at Industrial. It's so important that we have community oversight of the police so that we have a say in what's happening, as well as we actually know what's happening. It's not enough to have someone inside the police department checking, basically, trying to police with inside the department. That doesn't add to community trust. It's not a legitimate model for oversight. And it's something that will just make us, we're going to have to keep coming back to this if we don't get it right. We're just going to keep pushing on, hey, well, yeah, you have this auditor. Do we know anything about what's going on? We have very limited information, and we would rather have an actual voice in the process. So I'm in favor of community review boards or an advisory council, not keeping information confidential that points to that could actually endanger the community about who is actually serving in our law enforcement, and keeping all the funding independent from the police department. I am, really disappointed about how the last auditor was fired, basically for questioning the homeless policies of the city based on the accounts of officer morale. This isn't just a problem with SRPD. It's a problem with the way the city treats homeless people. And everyone needs to be accountable for that. But we need an auditor who is willing to speak to those issues as well. And I'm going to yield the rest of my time, but I strongly encourage an even stronger auditing position, an oversight position of the SRPD.
Thank you. Noah, followed by Melissa.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
A professional auditor must be independent and must prioritize the communities being actively brutalized. Being on the same payroll as the brutalizers is an inherent conflict of interest, as was stated before. And 3 years is an egregious time to keep such a position vacant. An independent auditing board made up from people who reflect the marginalized communities in this city would tell you that the police have repeatedly violated the Vannucci injunction and evicted unsheltered people against public health orders. An independent auditing board would prioritize the human rights report and hold police accountable for the attacks and arrests of protesters supporting Black lives, while giving a little more than a slap on the wrist to the multiple drivers who threatened and accelerated vehicles into crowds, including minors. And this auditing board would have actual power beyond internal arbitration and unenforced recommendations. It is clear that the police don't keep us safe. They fly racist flags and prioritize property over people. The police fired the last person for bruising their morale. You carry guns. Yet when there are paid millions, when unsheltered people need housing and Roseland has to fight to get support for a library, oversight is the bare minimum. It is step one in a trajectory that leads to disarm, defund, dismantle, and redistribute those resources into Black, Indigenous, people of color communities who are subject to the worst of disinvestment and police violence. The experiences held by many over this past summer are clear. The video evidence is clear. People's injuries, which they had to raise money on GoFundMe campaigns for, were clear. The lack of available shelter is clear. And yet, where do these millions of dollars go, especially to an unaccountable agency? I feel like the rest of it speaks for itself. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Melissa, did you already speak, or did you get moved to the bottom of the list?
I got moved to the bottom.
Okay, go ahead then, please.
Hi, my name is Melissa. I'm a lifelong resident of Santa Rosa. I'm an educator and community organizer. Yeah, I definitely share sentiments with everyone who's spoken before. I think that since building trust between the community and the police department is a priority for our city right now, I think the very first and most important step is filling this auditor position, and also making sure that there is full separation between the auditor and the police department, so there's no conflict of interest, and also having some kind of community board informing that position, because I think there needs to be a really strong link between our community and this auditor position, so they feel like they have some kind of a power balance between the community and our law enforcement, and that there's accountability, because that's really what has been lacking, is how is there accountability for actions that are taking. You know, the last couple of speakers spoke about the treatment of our houseless neighbors and how they just keep getting shuffled, and, you know, their possessions thrown away and their vehicles impounded. And it's not how we should be treating our citizens, especially our citizens that need the most help. So I absolutely support filling the auditor position, making sure it's a strong, independent position and that there is community input. And I'm also curious to where the money has gone, since this position hasn't been funded for 3 years and there's been money put aside. So hopefully it's still there. Yeah, so that's pretty much all. Just support what other people have said, and I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you very much. That now concludes our live public comment. We will now move on to voicemail public comment.
I'm pulling that up. Just one moment, please.
Thank you.
This is related to item 5.1. My name is Terry, and I believe there needs to be an independent auditor in place for the police department. It provides an unbiased view of the actions and work the police department does within our community. An independent auditor will not be subjected to the politics of city council or the manipulation of the city manager. The auditor needs to be untethered third party so that the information obtained is transparent. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no additional public comment, that now concludes the public comment portion of this item. I bring it back to the subcommittee for your questions first, and then we'll move into conversation. Any additional questions from you guys? All right, then. I have a question for the city attorney. Today, if we so choose, Madam City Attorney, can we discuss how the auditor role might work with the Citizen Oversight Board?
Yes, you can discuss that in general. Wouldn't get too far into the details of how a Citizen Oversight Committee or Commission might operate. That would have to be agendized as an agenda item. But in terms of talking about on the higher level of what you're looking for, if you are interested in continuing the auditor position, what you're looking for in that, and then just generally how it might collaborate or coordinate with the citizen oversight, that would be fine.
Thank you. And I have one more question, which is probably for the chief or one of your deputies, which would be, what types of models have proven most effective in other jurisdictions? And what, if anything, would you do differently than, I know you weren't the chief when Mr. Aronson was our auditor, but what would you do differently given what you know now?
So Captain Eric Litchfield has been in charge of our professional standards team for the last 3 years. He was also a lieutenant overseeing that prior to being a captain. I'll have him provide some of the answers to those different models.
Yeah, so in regards to which model is most effective, the model that's most effective is the one you build around the needs of your government entity, your department, and your community. So there's really not, there's not anything that's going to tell you model X is the most effective model and will work in your community. There are communities that have had really good success with their models. There's a really good one in Denver. And a lot of them are auditor-based models. So like IOLERO, like the model we have, those are called investigative and quality assurance models is the term you might hear those under. And those models generally involve an independent auditor or auditor group who oversees everything in general. And then one weakness of that model is the fact that it's one person. You heard that pointed out. And so much like IOLERO, sometimes you'll see a community review panel connected to that model to represent the wider community and to give input on auditor reports and policies and procedures from a community perspective. In my opinion, with the research I've done, those are very effective models for most communities because it leaves an auditor who's specifically auditing your use of force incidents, your personnel investigations. They have the ability to work with the professional standards team, which I'm going to call it because that's what we call it in Santa Rosa. You might hear it referred to as an IA or an internal affairs team. Most agencies now have switched to professional standards just because it's more encompassing of a larger mission. But anyways, they will work closely with that team to monitor these complaints and monitor these investigations from start to finish. And the auditor we had was very effective in that role. They will help the team learn. They will make sure that the investigations are complete and encompass everything that's required. They generally, and our auditor as well as IOLERO, had the power to take over an investigation if need be, if they felt that the department was not responsive and was not producing a proper product. That never happened here. We worked very closely with that person. So the auditor has to work closely with the police department. As far as where you put the budget money, that's a council decision. That's a city finance decision. It can be where you want it to be. I did not ever hear our auditor say that where he, which pot he got paid from, changed his opinion on anything. He had very strong opinions and was happy to share them, good or bad, which is what a good auditor does. So that it is a very strong model. The review and appellate model is generally a panel of civilians selected by a political body, council, or board of supervisors. In my opinion, it's not a very strong model because it has really no power. It looks at investigations at the end. It's not involved up front. It doesn't have investigative authority, investigative power. It doesn't get involved early. It doesn't look at policies and procedures or department performance as a whole, because in order to identify a systemic problem, which is a good thing about an auditor model, you have to be fully involved with all the complaints, all the use of force, and all the investigations so you can identify a systemic problem. It's part of their job to do that, which is where the assurance portion of the assurance model comes in. It's a quality assurance and a consistency job that they have to do. You don't get that in the review and appellate model. And the other model is the evaluate and performance-based model. That's what San Francisco has. And what that is, it is an entirely separate investigative body that basically conducts almost all the investigations, removes the department in large part from that process. And while it seems to be a very independent model, which it is, what it tends to do is remove the department from personal responsibility, because the chief is no longer making decisions. There's no longer an investigative component in the department. So what it tends to do is allow a police department to say, not my problem, we have a body for that. I think that's a very poor model. You have to, in my opinion, have the police department invested and responsible and accountable for holding their officers accountable. That model, it takes that away. It's also a very expensive model. And because you have to create a whole new bureaucracy for that. So a good, strong model has a good, strong auditor. There's nothing wrong or resistant to us about community input into it, much like IOLERO has. It's a good model. It really is. And from what I've seen and the research I've done, you can read Dr. Sam Walker. He's at University of Nebraska. He does a lot of research into that. I have some resources I'd be happy to share with any council member who would like to see a wide variety of research done on these models and how they work. But I would say, having worked closely with the auditor for many years, he was largely independent. He had to work with the police department. He had to have relationships here. Additionally, that auditor had access to everything. He reviewed every piece of body-worn camera footage. He had his own account into our system. He had access to all the police reports. He did coach individual sergeants and individual supervisors. That's part of an auditor role, is to coach people that he sees on how to do better. We used him extensively before interviews to review interview questions, to give input on, are we going down the right road? Do we have everything covered here? So he was very, very involved in the process. I called him at home many times. As you know, he was not a full-time auditor in the sense that he was there 40 hours a week. He visited the police department on a set schedule. However, he was available anytime, and I definitely used him as a resource several times to ask him questions, to inform him about an incident or something that has come up. And additionally, I'd just like to point out, the auditor has to work within the confines of confidentiality law. So one strong auditor trait that you want is someone who fully understands that, because there's actually quite a bit that can be said and put into transparency and made public It just has to be done a certain way. So an experienced auditor who's been doing this for a long time is very important. Someone who really understands all these facets, because personnel is extremely complicated across the board for everyone, no matter what profession you're in. There's many HR and confidentiality and personality rules. It's especially complicated in police work. So I hope I've kind of answered your question. And I'd also say the 3 models I gave you are the most common. I can sit here all day and give you a dozen others, but I know we have a hard time, and I'm sure you don't want to hear that.
I do appreciate your comprehensive question. But what I was wondering additionally is like what you touched on this, that the last auditor wasn't full-time. Clearly there are things that are beyond, we're going to pick an auditor. The auditor will, have their own personal peccadillos and be, great in some areas and have areas to work on, like how we all do. But what is within our control in terms of the conditions that you would set forth different from what we did before, or the previous council did before, that you would like to see set forth so that this auditor can be better set up for even more success?
So in my opinion, and I think some former council members, this was also an issue for them, was the auditor, his reporting out, his public reporting, his reporting to council was not sufficient. It was not in-depth enough, detailed enough, timely enough. It was an annual report. And so the community by and large, and even the council, really didn't get to see how involved he was and how much he was doing, how many investigations and the outcomes of those investigations for accountability. I could tell you, we do hold people accountable. We hold people accountable often. We do investigations. And I felt, and I think it was kind of a wider feeling, that didn't come out to the community as the information piece to let the community and the council know everything that was being done in accountability and investigations under use of force, personnel, and other areas. So in addition to all the things I mentioned where they need to be strong, I think we need more reporting out. I don't think an annual report is really sufficient. I think it could go to quarterly or minimally biannual, so that the community can hear what we're doing, the work we're putting in, and the work the auditor's putting in, and how the auditor is helping, how they're making recommendations. You can read, there's some really good auditor groups out there right now. They publish their reports on their websites, and you can see the lengths they go through to point out the work that's being done, the recommendations they've made, how the department's doing. That quality assurance, are there systemic issues? Did we identify and address them? I feel a lot of that was missing. And if I had any input for a more successful model, it would be better, more in-depth reporting out.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And last question, hopefully we can get this quick so we can get on to the other panelists. But my last question is, do we have any confidentiality rules in place locally? I understand there's state and federal rules that protect officers from a lot of, things in terms of or modify how things can and cannot be reported out. Is there anything that we do as a jurisdiction, either through ordinance or through bargaining, that would impede our ability to shed daylight on what goes on through an auditor's report?
No, our MOU, the police, there's 2 MOUs that cover police, and neither one of those has any specific restrictions or additional restrictions. And I know there are MOUs like that out there. Much like you, I've heard of those and seen some of them, and some of them are pretty incredible. But at any rate, no, we follow POBAR and the state confidentiality laws and under, the PRA laws and such. So POBAR, PRA, and regular state confidentiality and HR investigations. And I am not aware of any ordinance at all that provides any extra or additional protection.
Thank you very much. That's the extent of my questions. So now open it up for comments. Who wants to go first? Councilmember Schwedhelm.
Thanks. Eric, could you just let everyone know what POBAR is before I go into my comments? I know what it is, but.
So POBAR is the Police Officer Bill of Rights, and just commonly referred to as POBAR because police love acronyms and will give one to anything. All that is, it's a set of rules that we have to use to engage personnel investigations, and it covers what is confidential and what is not. It covers how and when we can interview officers. Really what it does is just lays out the basic rules. It doesn't impede us from conducting an investigation or completing one in a timely fashion. It just basically sets the ground rules.
And that's California state law, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So my comments on this is, yeah, let's get her moving. Looking at the, back in December, council talked with the SEED Collaborative, and one of their deliverables is the equitable policing plan. Because if we want to go a different route with oversight, I think that's a discussion for the entire council that maybe we may need to have on the 18th and 19th when we're all together. So I think we need to get the police auditor on board here. That person will be working with the SEED Collaborative, and we can start moving forward. So as quickly as we can do that. I'm also, and I think this is the case anyway, that there would be a representative from the city council in that selection process. And I think that does give a voice from the council who can then, he or she can update us where appropriate. And again, for the biased questions that came up, that's where I really think the SEED Collaborative, we're gonna be learning this as an organization together. And the timing of this is actually quite beneficial. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Rogers, do you have any comments?
I am definitely in support of getting that position filled. When I brought it up previously, I was told that we were waiting for C to complete its work, and I am not in support of waiting for C Collaborative to complete their work with us in order to fill that position. So I just would like to make that known also.
Thank you. So I too am in support of us moving forward with this quickly. One of the things that I would like to talk about is some of the conditions that we do move forward with it. I would like for this to be as apolitical and independent as possible. And to that end, what I'd like to see is something like a term contract that, you know, something like a 5-year or a 10-year term on a contract. I understand, you know, we may not be able to retain someone for that long, but something wherein an auditor could produce work that was very disfavorable to the council or the police department and not lose their position over it. Obviously, their contract would have, you know, off ramps for, you know, misconduct or whatever the case might be. You know, it's not like they'd be getting diplomatic plates or something, but that we would, you know, make this something that goes beyond one council in particular, and something that would be more durable and resilient and add more protections for the opinions of that person. I'd also like to see it be a full-time position and evaluate the resources needed to retain that person. So those are a couple of things that I saw as, I wasn't on the council, so it's obviously not really fair to Monday morning quarterback what went on then, but those were a couple of the things that I thought might be useful to us moving forward. The other thing too is I would like to recommend that this body recommends to the Charter Review Committee when it comes through that we put it into the charter as a term length, again, to reduce the political nature of it and make it more of an institution that has to be filled rather than one that can be filled or not filled, as the case has been lately. So with that, any further comments or thoughts from the panel?
I would also like to see that the community, the council, and PD have a chance to, I guess, audit the auditor. But just to say what their experiences are thus far with the auditor, even if it is a term contract, I find sometimes when we have long-term contracts, we're not getting what we want from a position, but it continues to roll because that is the status quo. So whatever we can put in place to get input from the community and everyone else as we go along, periodically.
Thank you.
And if I could just add too, because something that's missing here, and it seems like the former auditor is no longer employed by the city because of what he was said. And for me, it was a deliverable. And the only person who could clarify the expectations is the person he reported to, who happens to be the city manager who's not here. So if we want to have that discussion about timing and expectations, I would love to see what did the former contract look like? And then we could provide feedback on the totality of the contract versus just some single points.
Thank you. Yeah, clearly we don't have all of the information about, the specific conditions. My thoughts on having it be a term sort of came out not just about a reaction or response to that, but thinking about what we do at the judicial level in order to give our justices some amount of leeway to exercise their professional opinions. And so my mind, a term wouldn't mean that they were without oversight or not that they wouldn't answer to the community and not that their contract couldn't be terminated, but that there would be very specific cause. And if a cause was that they didn't deliver on their contract, then that would be reason to terminate them. Just like you can, get a judge out for, in many cases for misconduct. It's not as though I'm saying we should have like a free lunch ticket to whoever gets this thing. It should be highly watched and so forth. I just don't want it being subject to political whim because, for example, we could get a whole bunch of people on the council who have much more conservative or much more liberal views than that person does. And it could turn out that that person loses their job over what might have otherwise been fair or reasonable assessments of our department and our city. So that's what's going with that.
Chair, just to clarify, I just meant this would be something that was in place, that would be ongoing, not to say that they're doing anything wrong, but maybe to give positive feedback that the community is experiencing, but just having the chance that is already scheduled for the community and other people to give feedback of what they think the auditor is doing or not doing.
Okay, so at this time, Mr. Litchfield and Chief Navarro, do you have any specific questions for us in terms of direction that you need to move forward?
No, not at this time. We will work with the city manager, give him all of the, we've written down all of the feedback. And again, this position does report to the city manager and is out of the city manager's office. So all the decisions come out of that, but we will work with him to frame up the RFP and give him that information.
And thank you. And once the RFP has been created, will that item come to council for review?
So on behalf of the city manager, council member Fleming, city manager is prepared to release a solicitation within the next 30 days. It will get reviewed by a council member, and that council member is per standard policy. So whichever council member's name comes up during the specific month, and then the council will be responsible for awarding the final contract once that particular individual has been selected.
Okay, would it be possible for the RFP to at least be presented, not in for a vote, but just be presented to the council as a report out? Or an addendum or some sort of copy of it so that we can review it?
So you'd like to review the solicitation before it goes out on the street?
I'm open to hearing from other people. I don't want to gum up the works too much, and I get that what I'm asking for could delay this, but I also want us to be able to have eyes on it. So does anybody have an opinion on this besides me? Just speak up.
I don't want to necessarily see it. I would just say that I would like it to be somewhat flexible, because we will be receiving additional direction from Seed Collaborative. So that should be known within this solicitation that we are going to, you know, some things could be changing, but that would be the only thing that I would think would be a problem.
Okay, thank you.
And for me, the only thing goes back to the expectations. So I'd invite, you know, and I would hope all council members would share information with the city manager about the expectations of this position. I think the second slide listed the deliverables. That's where I think we give that input, and then that gets incorporated in the RFP. I don't necessarily need to see the final review of the RFP. I've already clarified my expectations with the city manager.
Okay, so then we will proceed as planned with that.
And I have been taking notes, Councilmember Fleming, on the comments that each of the council members been making here. Also, I would just suggest that the city manager will likely be having one-on-one conversations with each of the council members in order to try to solicit the type of feedback that you would each like to have incorporated into the final solicitation. So, you know, I'm hoping that we'll be able to put together a document that meets the tenor and the needs as you have reflected at this point.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nutt. I appreciate it. With that, we conclude item 5.1. Let me pull up the agenda here and backtrack to find out where we were before I decided with my subcommittee to make everything confusing. All right, we are on to item 3, public comment on non-agendized items. This is a time when any person may address matters not listed on the agenda, but which are within the subject matter of this jurisdiction. The public may comment on agenda items when the item is called. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes. And we will begin with Melissa. Melissa, are you able to hear me?
Hi, I'm sorry. I meant to comment on 5.2.
We will be taking up 5.2 after we do item 4. This
Thank
item
you.
4. Thank you. Okay. Seeing no additional comments, Matt, oh, there we go. Samra, followed by Bree-Ann.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
So I kind of further want to push the necessity of having a community group attached to the independent auditor. Like, I heard you like saying like, oh, we don't want to keep it political, and like, you know, like, hey, we don't want them influenced by somebody that may be more liberal or like, you know, like more conservative, but like in all actuality, like you still have to admit that they're still going to be subject to their own bias. And like, if it's another white man, then like, come on, you're still going to have those like, you know, personal biases that just like come with growing up. And a community group can help provide another perspective to this person that is necessary. That's like genuinely necessary. Like it is very important for people to have like, you know, other voices, like, you know, other influences that aren't only white people. And also, by the way that like, what's his name, Eric was talking about it, he seems like he kind of got a little chummy with the auditor, or at least he was one of the persons that the auditor communicated with a lot. So that's still grounds for bias. Like if you perceive somebody in a good or like, you know, good light, which he might have perceived Eric, then that's still going to cause some bias. And if you don't have any group of like brown people that you could perceive in a good light, then how are you going to like how are you going to be able to like remain unbiased? How are you going to be able to like get like a diverse like array of like understand a diverse array of people and like a diverse array of experiences? It's not fair. And like if somebody from that community, like, you know, are like black and brown community, like experience something that's bad, they can potentially communicate that with the auditor. And on that note, Eric, you were talking about like how your auditor performed very well, and how they kind of like, you know, called you out when necessary. But like you're still kind of relying on like independent like goodness of this auditor. Like, hey, this one did great, therefore the other ones don't need to be overseen or anything. But that's still relying, that it's subjective, like how much a person's gonna like bring to the table or how much a person's gonna pursue. It's still subjective. You don't necessarily know if this person's gonna like push to like, hey, I'm gonna like get every single aspect of this, or they might omit certain things. But if they have no one really watching them as they work, they're just one guy. It's not like anybody's forcing them to do this. It's not like anybody else is gonna know what's happening to the depths that they do. So it's not like they have to do any of it. Like, honestly, the only information that you get is from the auditor. So you don't know if they've omitted something or didn't. So that just presents more and more bias. And like on that note, like we cannot wait on this. Like you need more people, like you know, at least like, you know, a diverse array of voices, like around this like auditor, like helping them understand these like, you know, views and like opinions. And on that note, like I'm still like waiting for like, you know, maybe Tom or Navarro to say, hey, why hasn't this position been filled? You know, like at least like an apology. Like, come on, guys. It's been 3 years and you knew this. 3 years and you knew we didn't have an auditor, which is, and like for the city council and like the police claiming that you're serving the communities and like, you know, that you're not self-serving. And then you turn around and do this because you knew well and good we didn't have an auditor. And you don't even have the gall to apologize is just cruel. Like cruel in like the purest sense of the word. And now you're here and now you're doing this. At the very least, you could apologize. Or at the very least, like prove that you're worthy of like, you know, staying here and actually like being here and staying on this committee. Like honestly.
Thank you. Brianne, followed by Melissa.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. First and foremost, I want to say to Chief Navarro that you have more supporters than not. I truly respect you and your staff, and I just think you're doing an incredible job with what you have. And so I think you are being transparent. I've heard that word, I don't know how many times now. And I don't agree with people who say that Santa Rosa Police Department is not being transparent. The officers I have talked to are actually pro-auditor. The previous auditor did ride-alongs and spoke with officers and did call them on stuff in the conversations I have had. City Council is the one who has to hire him. It's not just Ray Navarro who's like, I just don't feel like hiring an auditor today. You know, so I feel like we're looking at the wrong person. Santa Rosa is ahead of national police reform. And the, this goes back even to the last meeting. The recent high-profile cases that have been brought up, you know, Santa Rosa Police Department wasn't involved. And had it happened here, I feel confident as a resident, as a lifetime resident, that the men and women of Santa Rosa Police Department would have handled things differently. They are well-trained and they are true professionals. I don't understand some of the things that are being talked about our police officers. I've seen them wave to people. I've seen them at schools. You know, it makes me sad that this is a constant topic and everybody wants to blame Ray for something that's going on when we all have responsibility in this, and the disrespect that is being talked about, such as Victoria last week. Man, I was so disappointed to hear you say that I am white, I pay taxes, I have privilege. You know, talk about offensive. And I don't understand why you haven't taken Santa Rosa up on a ride-along. They've offered you ride-alongs and you haven't done it. Are you afraid that they're going to, your mind is going to be changed? And for people who think they can do the job better than the people we currently have on the department, they're hiring. So put in an application, put your boots on the ground, and make a difference.
Thank you. Melissa, followed by Kimmy.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, hi. I just want to make a quick comment, a couple of things. One is, even if we are ahead in police reform, I feel like as the largest city in the North Bay, we should be kind of a beacon. We should be setting an example. So we can always do better. And also, not on topic of that, I really would like to bring attention to our homelessness situation and the way that they are constantly being shuffled from one place to another, their possessions tossed in dumpsters, their vehicles impounded, their only, that they live in. So I just want to bring attention to, I want to talk about it. I want it to be known that these things are happening and we need to do better because we need to stop terrorizing our most vulnerable folks, our folks who don't have homes. So that is pretty much all my comment. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. We have Evan followed by Kimmy.
Hello. I would just like to reemphasize that it sounded like an actual recommendation. I think it's from Officer Litchfield. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Eric. Even from within the Santa Rosa Police Department, your professional standards representation there, if I'm interpreting correctly, is that you would have an auditor with an additional, sort of civilian boards and community-driven boards. And I think you have mutuality there in a sense that I don't think anyone's trying to say that you don't need this relationship, to have some sort of direct interaction with the police department. There's a certain level of just functionality that requires that, but there has to be actual empowered community oversight in addition to that. And when you asked, Councilmember Fleming, you asked for recommendations or opinions of what you can do better. That's how I heard him speaking on it. And that sounds like that's coming on behalf of the police department. I hope our council is ready to move in light of everything. This is not really a controversial or even a politicized issue to talk about best practices for accountability and transparency. This benefits the public and it benefits the police department because whatever is the truth is the truth. And if we do have the finest officers that a lot of their supporters like to stake their claim to, transparency only reveals that as so. So there's really no need for resistance, whether that's from, voting electorate or through our representatives that we've elected here for the council. This is an obvious time. So in addition to how important this auditor is and how rapidly that role is filled, the expansion, that's not just the sentiments you're getting from the public and a loud group of an activist community. You also have just now heard it, whether it was regarding cahoots, the presentation given, or Officer Litchfield when he was just speaking, people that I think are genuinely concerned with professional standards and providing the best service for the community as possible. All signs point to the same thing. So, kind of beating a dead horse, but you're going to keep hearing from us until there's something tangible that shows progress that's not ahead of what other cities and municipalities are doing in the country, but what's the right thing to do. I appreciate that we may be further ahead and more progressive than this average police department, but from a historical context, that is completely insufficient. and from just a community benefit perspective, that is insufficient. And this doesn't need to be a point of controversy. This is just about getting it right for a community, and it's in the best interest of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Libs, followed by Kimmy.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Indeed.
I want to echo Evan's points about the truth is just the best thing for everybody in this instance. One of the reasons why the public doesn't have a great relationship with the police department is not of the public's fault. It's law enforcement has not been transparent about what they're doing, has not been transparent about how they're funding their things, has not been transparent about the relationships with power in this county. So how can you expect us to trust you if you won't tell us what's actually going on? How can you expect us to trust you if you don't go over the things that we keep asking you to go over? I understand that some of you want to actually do things to better serve your community. I understand that some of you may not know what that is, but frankly, the things that people have been saying about defunding the police and reallocating some of those funds to better serve.
Libs, for some reason, we can no longer hear you. Okay, why don't we go on to Kimmy, and then Libs, if you figure out your stuff, we will let you finish your 2 minutes. Kimmy?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, sorry, I kept raising my hand and bringing it back down because I really wanted to speak to item, the fifth item, but I did also want to bring to the attention that speaking to transparency and trust, I really want to draw attention to the fact that there are two lived realities in this county. After hearing some other folks speak saying that they have such high trust, in our officials and our law enforcement, there is a whole nother reality of folks who absolutely don't. And as Libby was saying a second ago, I do believe that everyone has the best intentions to serve, but that is constructed from your own lived experiences, right? So these two realities in Sonoma County essentially are the folks who, are, doing all right, you have enough money, you probably have never had an interaction that was negative with law enforcement. And then there's the other, lived reality where you're struggling, you are shelterless or homeless or on the brink of that. You haven't had a good interaction with law enforcement that has shaped your views in your life, right? Because incarceration subsequently makes us second-class citizens. Being known with law enforcement puts us on edge. Being on the verge of poverty or shelterlessness, brings our interactions with law enforcement as well. And the shelterless in this community, frankly, are not treated as part of our community. People, I hear on these public safety comments all the time that, oh, they're not even from this area. Well, how many folks are transplants here, right? Quote unquote, transplants here, maybe moved up from San Francisco or moved up from San Diego, and yet they're still greeted as part of this community that now they live here because they have the privilege of having a roof over their head. Right. So there is a stark difference in how we treat people in this community based on this class status. And the wealth inequality here is so drastic. It's so disgusting. And then we bring in public safety. Okay, so our shelterless folks are getting raided. We could reallocate funding to support people. Same thing, our undocumented folks are treated as second-class citizens or second-class residents, right? Are treated as less than, similar to our shelterless folks. And then on top of that, too, folks struggling with mental health and disabilities are also highly affected by law enforcement because maybe there isn't the ability to react to commands, the way that law enforcement wants you to, or whatever causes that then the brutality be used against someone who's experiencing a mental health crisis, which happens a lot in this county, regardless if it's our local police department or our sheriffs. The fact is that people have been harmed by law enforcement due to mental health, right? So one thing I really hope that this subcommittee really looks like is how we treat our shelterless folks and how we treat our folks suffering with disabilities and mental illness in this county, in this city, because right now all we are doing is raiding people. And in times of COVID, that's even more detrimental because you are spreading COVID by moving people around instead of providing them with basic resources. And using the police as a tool to bully folks who are impoverished is absolutely unethical. That's my time.
Thank you. And Liz, I see that your hand is back up. I do believe you had 2 remaining minutes. Would you like to Continue.
Can you hear me?
Indeed.
Okay, I would like to continue. I'd like to also piggyback off of what Kimmy is saying, that the whole response to our houseless neighbors has been abhorrent, has been very disingenuous to building trust with community members, and is just downright shameful. People are dying on the streets, and so many people are saying that they're just dirty and that they don't deserve what they have, or they don't deserve it. Like they're treated like second-class citizens, or even worse, and that's not okay. They are our neighbors. They are also our community. We have to be taking care of everybody. Using law enforcement to bully them and to spread them during a pandemic is honestly, it's really heartbreaking, and it's so infuriating, because when law enforcement says they're here to protect and serve, they are literally not doing that. They're doing the exact opposite of that to our houseless neighbors. That's unforgivable. And the fact that people want to call them heroes, I mean, I understand that you might have your own lived experiences with that may have been positive with law enforcement, but again, the other side of that coin is that so many people are brutalized by them. And the people that are being most vocal about it are people that also probably been brutalized or been abused by cops before in their lives. So I would really urge y'all to consider, really just do this completely differently. There are dozens of empty houses right now. There are dozens of places that actually could be made into livable, great shelters for our houseless neighbors. What is being offered right now is abysmal. Now, I haven't talked to that many of our neighbors myself, but I know from the few that I've talked to, they don't like the Finley Park place. They don't like the shelters that have been provided. They're not humane. We can do better. Y'all can do better. So why don't you? Is it because you hate houseless folks too? Because that's what it's looking like to me and to so many of the rest of us. You have an opportunity to take care of everybody, so do that. I yield my time.
Thank you very much. Judy and Greg Urbis.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, please go on.
Good. First of all, I would like to thank Captain Litchfield, for answering some of the questions in a conversation that he and my wife had a little while ago. But I'm calling in to maybe shift the conversation just a little bit about what is a possible path forward in some of the issues that we're facing. I mean, and not just us, but people who live in the greater Santa Rosa area. I can't tell you how many times I've seen 3 or 4, maybe even sometimes a 5th car go through a red light at North Dutton and West College. I mean, I've become so cautious that sometimes people honk at me because I'm not moving in the intersection the second the light turns green, because I can't see clearly. I'm not doing that because of traffic concerns. Just in general, we know that there is a lack of staff, and the city's finances have taken a major hit given the pandemic and the fires. But we have talked to the police, we've talked to code enforcement. We have a situation in our neighborhood where we have a house across the street from us where loud noises, boom boxes, people working on cars on the street, the jacked up small pickup truck that's been on stands for 2 weeks, it finally came down. Things are they're code violations, and code enforcement doesn't have the staff to deal with any of this. This is really discouraging, and it's getting, we moved up here to be closer to our family, and we accomplished that. We came up here the year that 60 inches of rain was logged at the airport. We weren't planning on that, but we thought, oh my God, this is so much better than San Diego. We love it up here. Every once in a while, we're wondering, did we do the right thing? For all of the difficulties the city is facing. And again, I am not faulting the police department in one bit. Staffing is a problem. In a letter I wrote to Chief Navarro, I said, it would be really interesting if the department would be able to say, we need 15 more officers and this is what it's going to cost for the next 20 years. You want more police? Vote yes on proposition XYZ and we'll hire the officers we need and we'll deal with the traffic issues. We'll deal with the speeders. We'll help code enforcement and we'll start doing some things that make Santa Rosa a fine, great place to live. Not that it's not that now, but it seems like it's slipped a little bit in the almost 5 years that we've been up here. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you. Susan.
Just in response to the last commenter, I would say that if we had a cahoots model or anything like that, we would not need all the policemen to be doing some of the things they are doing, and they'd be available to do traffic. But that was not what I want to talk about. I just want to say to those who have trouble imagining that police are anything but good because they have only had good experiences with them, I would simply say that try to listen. Listen to people who have had a different experience than you have had. I'm a white woman who has never had a bad experience with a police officer. But I have been working on this for years because I believe what people are telling me. And I believe what I see. And I don't say the world is based upon only what I have experienced. So I would simply say to everybody, listen to each other, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further live public comment, we will now turn to voicemail public comment.
Chair Fleming, there's no voicemail public comments on non-agenda matters.
Okay, thank you. So that now concludes public comment on non-agendized items. Seeing that we have no, let me pull up item 4 here. Seeing that we have no minutes to approve, we move on to item 5.2, Thin Blue Line post, social media post. This will be an opportunity for the subcommittee to ask questions of staff. So, do we have any questions from our subcommittee? Okay. Do we have anything that staff would like to add about this? Okay. I have a question then. I'm curious to know, where we now stand with I don't know, Chief, if you call it an insignia. I know this is not a flag originally, a symbol or a decal. What is the best way to refer to the symbol that we all know we're talking about?
Well, I think it's, it's the thin blue line. So I think you call it what it is.
Right. Okay. So could you express for the listening public and subcommittee what the current city policy is on the use of that image in the city?
Yeah. So there is no actual policy that says anything specifically about the thin blue line. If I can provide you or could provide the committee with a brief explanation of what happened, and if you'd like, but basically there was back in January there was a post that included a banner which included a flag with a blue line in it. That banner was given to us by members of the community to basically show their appreciation and support. The initial post generated a lot of reactions, a lot of likes, which were positive. However, there were most of the comments were negative. While us as a department wanted to thank the community members who made the banner and the community who continues to support us in the work that we do, it did offend some people who did view it. So we, in order to try to eliminate barriers with any segment of our community, chose to remove it. That is not made lightly or in a vacuum or without serious thought. Whenever there's a potential obstacle to positive engagement with any group, we need to think about it and think about how we can communicate more effectively. For me, the thin blue line is it is a symbol that has historically been one that is that shows a line between peace and chaos, and the line in what we do and the work that we do, and it's used to honor those who've been killed in the line of duty. And it reflects everything that we do on a daily basis. However, this is it has been co-opted. There are people who view it in a divisive manner rather than the positive connotation that it is meant to represent. So for us, this is a difficult time for our nation and our community, and for law enforcement, and we need to understand the role where we need to be in this particular conversation. So for us, the men and women of the Santa Rosa Police Department, we're continuing to be committed to improving the relationship and the trust with the community. I do want to thank the community for their continued support, and the department who have shown their support in our decisions. We are steadfast in our mission to make this city a safe place to live, work, and play, and to continue to strive to be an organization that is committed to setting the benchmark of policing, of excellence in policing. So with that, the decision was made to take it off of the social media post and not use it on the post anymore. And so that was an internal discussion. The city of Santa Rosa as a whole, I did speak with our Marcoms director. The social media policy for the city is being reviewed, and as we it's currently being reviewed.
Thank you. So I guess I was incorrect in thinking that there had been an agreement with the city and the police department to discontinue the use of that image in city operations.
Yeah. So the decision is we are not using it on social media. We are not using the thin blue line in social media.
Okay. Thank you for the information, Natalie.
And the banner itself, Chief?
The banner was removed from the department.
Thank you. Do we have any additional questions from the subcommittee? Okay, seeing none, I will thank you, Chief, for your explanation. I will open this up for public comment on item 5.2. I have Melissa, followed by Evan.
Hello, can you hear me?
Indeed, thank you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Melissa. I am a white woman who sees that systemic racism exists, also poverty and mental illness. My husband and I bought my Santa Rosa home in 1977, raised my child here, and helped raise my grandchildren. I'm a retired longtime Santa Rosa City public school teacher. I thoroughly appreciate Police Chief Navarro's comments in the Press Democrat after taking down the thin blue line flag. The comments showed me that he is a wise leader, not only smart, but wise. So thank you, Chief Navarro. Not displaying this political flag is one small thing we need in these times when we must improve our society towards a goal of true equality for all. It's destructive to polarize people and issues, as some letter writers on this topic have attempted. Not supporting the thin blue line flag does not mean that we do not support good police practices and wise officers. I also want to thank a previous commenter who, like myself, has not had any negative experience with police or sheriff. But I well know people who have, because of being a person of color and not doing anything wrong, had negative experiences, not just here, but other places. And her comment to try to think about the others, I totally agree with. So thank you, and I'll yield my remaining time.
Thank you. Evan, followed by Susan.
Thank you again for the time. You know, a lot of these agenda items and the prior meeting continuing into this meeting, you know, were policy-based and very substantive. And I know this is somewhat policy-based, but it's really cultural. And I think you have to frame things in a way that people are able to understand and relate to them. Otherwise, we don't really have a productive conversation. And people tend to get defensive and misunderstand each other when they're only operating from their own experience without empathy for other people, has been pointed out by the few callers before me. And I've been trying to find, you know, something to relate it to. And, you know, if we were interacting and I'm standing on your foot and I don't know that I'm doing that, it still hurts your foot hurts the same regardless. If you then inform me that I'm standing on your foot and I still don't think that I am and I'm in denial that I am, that's another point in the conversation. That's still very rude and inconsiderate of me to not listen to somebody telling me they're standing on the foot. And the point is, it hurt either way, whether it was intentional or not. So, you know, symbols are literally representations of figurative meanings. That's by definition, you know, what a symbol is. Without their meanings, they serve no purpose. So for, you know, I'd say like this, there are countless ways to publicly show support for police and law enforcement that don't have to use symbols and imagery that also devalue others' lives, their basic rights to exist, and actively opposing widespread efforts for criminal justice reform. So I ask anyone who's going to call in support or who thinks they're in support to ask themselves why they're voluntarily choosing to associate with something that dehumanizes and people and can be cruelty as part of your show of support. Why would you insist on continuing to do so when you've been made aware that what you're doing, even if not intended by you or not your personal interpretation, once you've been made aware of that, and this isn't even like a fringe opinion. I mean, it's maybe not a majority of the public, but it's a very substantial amount of the public. And it's very simple. There are so many ways you can express support for the police officers. Why would you volunteer one that's hurtful? And I would also really compare this, that denying systemic racism is very similar to Holocaust denial. And the fact that we would actually even allow and validate public debate you would never do that for somebody denying the Holocaust. We have to take that same attitude when it regards basic human rights and conditions. It's both sidesism is a complete false equivalence. That's what the divide is. It should not be a matter of disagreement about human dignity and life. And you don't have to voluntarily opt into things that are cruel to other people. So you really, the ending part, I know I just have a few seconds, is I really hope there's a different PR protocol, which it sounds like there is, because again, there's a theme of preventative practices versus responsive. And we need a lot of improvement there. And this never should have happened in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan, followed by Michael.
First off, Evan, I want to thank you very much for that comment. I really appreciate it. There's considerable disagreement as to what the thin blue line flag originally meant. Chief Navarro says that there is one of those in law enforcement. who says it represents the police officers who stand between the public and lawlessness. Others in the community say that it has always stood as a symbol sort of us versus them. For those who don't understand, whatever it once meant no longer matters. Today, after years of violent Trump rhetoric and plenty before that, it now most definitely stands for us versus them, and for some in law enforcement, a virulently racist version. With that new meaning, a terrible message is sent to the community when a thin blue line flag is flown. Even those in law enforcement who do not intend a message of hate should understand why that is the message that others receive. I'll repeat what I said earlier. It is necessary for those who have only had good interactions with law enforcement to listen to those who have not. Believe them. This flag has never been necessary, and now it can literally be traumatic. It's time to retire this flag forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael, followed by Samra.
Hi, I'd like to express that this flag should not be used in any form with the Santa Rosa Police Department, any other police department. The message that this flag portrays is extremely, it portrays the police as the guardian order.
Michael, we can no longer hear you.
Police
Your connection is...
and that are overly brutalized and sometimes killed for people who communities who are brutalized and often killed by police. The question is, are we the anarchy in this metaphor? Is Black Lives Matter the anarchy? And it's interesting to me that this flag was not nearly as popular as it is today before the Black Lives Matter movement. Why is that? Is it because actually, yes, many of the people who use this flag see Black Lives Matter as anarchy? Is that a way to address the wounds that exist in this community in any way, shape, or form? I'm really shocked that the police department subscribes to this idea that they're somehow protecting the community from anarchy at the same time that they're brutalizing people who are responding to the lack of accountability, the lack of actual lawfulness within the police department. That doesn't make any sense to me. That doesn't add up. If we're going to actually restore order to society, it can't be an order based on police brutality as something that's normal or accepted. And it's not surprising that the white supremacists fly this flag, because that's exactly what they subscribe to, the belief that it's okay for communities such as the Black community to be over-policed and to be brutalized and to be held to higher standards than white communities. I don't believe that this flag should be used in any form, not just on social media. This flag is so divisive and it's toxic. It's absolutely toxic in this community. It's good that there was a public apology for the flag, but it's a little bit too late, We need to be going into we need to think about how we're actually going to make up for this horrible incident. And that's my time.
Thank you. Samra, followed by Allegra.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So, Navarro, it really seems like you don't, while you did have this flag taken down, it doesn't seem like you necessarily oppose this flag / you still kind of stand by it, as in like you don't see the problem with it, even though hey, we don't want to be like the, we don't want to cause division. We're going to take it down, but I still kind of like it, as in like you. And honestly, the thin blue line flag, it's just thinly veiled racism. That's it. Like blue lives, it's a symbol. And symbols have meaning. And the thin blue line has the arrogant nature of saying that the police are the only thing preventing society from descending into mass chaos and anarchy. It's commonly used by those who oppose BLM and aggressively support the police, regardless of anything the police have done, raising them above scrutiny and above doubt. So a weird sense of culty nationalism. So supporting the police, there's no doubt, no scrutiny, despite all odds. It's no surprise that this flag was flown at the white supremacist attack on the nation's capital, because really, that's all it is. Blue lives don't exist. Stop drawing equivalence between a racial identity and a job. And this Blue Lives Matter flag, all it's done is tear people apart. It's meant to promote this sense of camaraderie. It's like, it creates like a sense of family, community. Like I guess us versus them, but us is like, it's a group. The police are a group. And it's meant, and as a symbol, it's supposed to, identify that group and, support that group. And due to that, like the police become less like this is a job and more like this is a family and we have to watch each other's back. And it promotes that notion. And that's all it's done. And that's all it's been used for. It's promoted the notion of, oh, we're a family. Oh, we deserve support. And it's been used by people, racists, to support the police despite anything the police have ever done, even though it's a job, and that's all it should be viewed as. And I remember when Tom Schwedhelm wore that, like, the garter thing or gator, I don't know, the mask thing with the, blue, like the Blue Lives Matter symbol or whatever. And it really goes to show that, like, people do not view this as a job. And it's harmful. That's why it's harmful. The police have the position of having to, being able to enforce, violent order on whoever they see fit and get away with many things, since they are the ones executing the law. So that camaraderie is dangerous. It's dangerous for us all, and we're telling you this. And for that one woman who came after me, the world doesn't revolve around you. Like, just because you haven't experienced something doesn't mean that it's not real.
Thank you. Allegra, followed by Noah.
Hi. I think Samra said it really well. I think everyone so far has pretty much had the same message. But if you're flying a flag that white supremacists and racists and neo-Nazis are flying, you probably need to rethink that. Like, supporting symbols that people with violent tendencies and racist opinions hold usually means you're in the wrong. I think that it's a clear symbol to at least like reevaluate and rethink for a minute. And also that interpretation that the thin blue line is a line between basically peace and chaos, or good and bad, good and evil, that's super divisive. What you're saying at that point is that officers are infallible and anybody being policed is automatically a criminal. So for a police department that has put a lot of lip service into public perception and community building over the past few months, I would say that's a really poor tactic to take, because it's not building community, it's dividing community. It's further separating law enforcement away from the community and saying that there are some people who are good and the rest of the people are really, closer to animals or closer to somebody who just needs authority over them. And I think that's wrong. I think you're sending the wrong message. And I think the fact that it was posted to social media in the first place was embarrassing. And the fact that you're now kind of like apologizing while still defending it is, it's a mixed message at best, and also still kind of embarrassing. So thank you.
Thank you. Noah, followed by Leslie.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
This symbol was always racist. I will say that again. This symbol was always racist. There were no good intentions to corrupt, no initial good use that was then later co-opted. This symbol was always racist. Even the language that was used to describe its supposed good intentions, saying that there is a thin blue line between total lawlessness, comes from the same origins in racism as police themselves. For those who do not know, police originated as white slave-catching vigilantes. And this word lawlessness, this word used to scare and to garner support from people of great privilege, predominantly people of white privilege and people of financial privilege, into supporting violent institutions has had a long history. They might as well have projected the Willie Horton ad on The Office on loop. This word lawlessness is almost always applied to Black people, to Indigenous people, and to communities of color. And the law and the supposed laws police uphold are violent, traumatic, and racist in their origin and application. And we know what symbol that flag accompanies. How many times have people seen that flag next to the Confederate flag, next to flagrant neo-Nazi symbols? We know what that symbol means and comes from. So why is it more acceptable? Why is it allowed? And why is it not viewed with the same revulsion? There's no honor in upholding systemic oppression, no good intentions to flout. The places that seem to be the most lawful are the places with no police presence. It was once spoken by a number of progressive senators that what does a world without police look like? A white suburb. I will take pause to ensure that this is translated adequately for 10 more seconds, and then I will yield the rest of my time at the mark of 20.
Thank you. Leslie, followed by Demetra.
Hi, thank you so much for this time and for addressing this topic. I want to appreciate some of the comments and sentiments of the other public comments, as well as the comments that were made by Councilmember Victoria Fleming at the council meeting a couple weeks ago, as well as Vice Mayor Rogers and Councilmember Schwelthout. I know that this is a difficult issue, but I really want to point out specifics in that the thin blue line has been posted on social media before by the city of Santa Rosa. Unfortunately, that was done in April. It was April 21st, 2020. There were public comments that were made about it appearing in a video, and it was taken down. And those comments were about it being a racist symbol, a symbol of white supremacy, and a symbol that was inappropriate on a city site. I want to speak to the fact that social media is powerful. I know that Councilmember Sawyer spoke a couple weeks ago in that, he just doesn't go on it. And that is one way to do it, but there are a lot of people that are watching and are listening, and it does affect people's lives. I think in this instance, obviously we've seen how emotional this topic is, but it speaks to the fact that it can bring about an unsafe situation for community members. And that is something that I know Chief Navarro has said that he wants to bring about safety for all community members. So we have to really pay attention to what we put on social media. And because it was taken down once before in response to community outcries, I think that it speaks to a very dire need to have social media standards, operations, and procedures as well and policies for all departments and consistency of all departments, and also someone looking at social media and monitoring it, and that all departments actually are posting in some similar format and not necessarily having just a member of a department posting, but there's actually a PR, marketing, someone who is skilled in that way and that will use the proper symbols or images and not the ones that are said that they're not to be used. So I just want that to be known that that was April 21st, 2020. Thank you.
Thank you. Demetra, followed by resident 8588.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you hear us? Oops. All right, Demetra, if you come back, we'll get you in after resident 8588.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Pamela Van Helsema, and I just wanted to say how concerned I was and really disappointed when I came upon the post of the Thin Blue Line flag. In fact, I understand that there was an anonymous gift of this banner, and I'm not sure why anonymous. It's kind of weird to me, to the police to show appreciation. It was a strange flag. It was a flag that had not the right number of stars. The number of stars was similar to the number of stars around the Civil War time. Not sure what that was supposed to mean. These details matter. Symbols matter. And the Thin Blue Line flag has I read all about the history of that symbol. It's kind of interesting. It's been used as a badge of honor in policing and to stand up for one another. But what we've learned, especially over this last year, is that kind of standing up for one another is sometimes hiding injustices and hiding poor police practices that oppress people, especially people of color. And since that has been so widely understood, I mean, everyone, not just in the nation, but the world is understanding that, it is really shocking that the judgment of what was appropriate to post publicly that way, especially on MLK weekend, I mean, at any time, but on MLK weekend to be, that's a symbol that you're celebrating. The judgment was really shocking. So I watched and waited really quite a long time, watching a lot of comments come in about it until finally Chief Navarro made a wise decision to remove it and to post some comments. And they were comments of careful and measured leadership and leadership about listening. And I appreciate that, and I'd like us to move in that direction because to me, the Thin Blue Line is drawing lines and creating us versus them situations. And our communities are not going to be safer when it's us versus them. Our communities, when it's safer, when it's we all together. When we partner with not just police, but healthcare, schools, individual community members like me, caring deeply about having everyone live in dignity and harmony together and giving people what they need to have a good existence and to communicate well together. I mean, that's what our vision should be. And anytime we're drawing lines between us versus them, I think that's divisive and that's not helpful. So let's not use this flag anymore. and we can honor individuals. I don't like anyone dying. A police officer a black or brown body or anybody, but let's celebrate life and eliminate this kind of divisive symbol.
Demetra?
Hi, thank you. I had a little technical difficulty there. Hi, I'm Demetra Smith. I don't live in Santa Rosa, but I have been called to Santa Rosa. I have heard the tears. I have seen the injuries. I have heard the people that were too afraid to be included in the human rights report. I'm not going to get into semantics. I'm going to give a few facts. Fact: law enforcement is an outgrowth of the institution of slavery in this country. Fact: I grew up during Rodney King and the Central Park Five. I grew up before the cameras were there. Fact: I spent 10 years doing anti-racist work and warning folks about what was coming while I was being attacked on social media and in my community by people who said, but don't you think it's better now that we have a black president? Don't you think we have made some improvements? Are you still not satisfied? The thin blue line being the line between chaos and law enforcement, we are telling you that law enforcement is the chaos. Law enforcement is the lawlessness. When you are allowed to harm, maim, and kill people with immunity, that is chaos. What you are doing by utilizing this flag is you are signaling to white supremacists, we are with you. We feel you. We stand with you. And if that's not the intention, and I certainly hope it's not, it should be so clear by now what this flag means. I'm going to tell everyone right now that legislation is about to be introduced in this state to address white supremacists in law enforcement. We're not going to be pleading for our humanity and messing around with jurisdictions here and there. We are going to the state and we will be addressing this. Do not use this flag. This is an insult to Black lives, to Indigenous lives, to Latinx lives, to Asian lives. This is an insult. This is insult to injury. This should never have happened. Never. We have to do better. Black Lives Matter. I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no additional live public comment, we will now move on. Oops. Kimmy.
Hi, so sorry, I thought I had my hand up. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Hi. So I just want to say that, I mean, so many people already have eloquently spoke about this, and, you know, not to keep nailing this home or hammering this home, but this flag to communities who are affected does not mean support for law enforcement, rather a support for perpetuating racial injustice via the criminal justice system. For every cry for our police to please stop killing brown and Black siblings, there has been an argument to support what is known as blue lives. We have seen this flag flying alongside other racist imagery at the state capitol and all throughout this summer's protests against police brutality. So this is not a phenomenon, this is very well known. Imagery speaks volumes, and the fact that SRPD was so tone deaf to this issue really highlights the disconnection between law enforcement and this community, especially including communities affected by over-policing. The virulent supporters of this flag on the Facebook page also shows why communities of color do not feel safe here. Your threads are riddled with low-key and high-key racism, classism, and white supremacy. And I see the comments of the supporters of law enforcement cheering the use of force against people who are struggling with homelessness and public health issues such as addiction and mental health. They're cheering you on to harm people who need help. And then the jokes that you also post on your pages, when someone is arrested for drug use or for drug possession, that is dehumanizing. This is not funny. No one wakes up wanting to be addicted to drugs or wanting to have to hustle like that, right? So I'm a formerly incarcerated youth, and I had addiction as a teenager. I was a high school dropout, and then, miraculously through the support of mentors, not law enforcement at all, not the juvenile justice system at all, but through the help of mentors and counselors, I was able to get clean and then get my master's in public policy. And one thing I do every year is go back to my old rehab and talk to the youth there and really validate that I know you didn't want to wake up and be in this situation. And they cry because that is the first time that people have humanized them instead of calling them bad youth or bad adults, which eventually is what happens, right? And say, I know you didn't want to be like this, and there's some external circumstances, and I'm so sorry that instead of getting help, you're treated as a bad person. Right? So you have people on your threads who are just jumping on this and also expressing their happiness against the way you dehumanize other people. So it's disgusting, it's inhuman, and it's wrong. And if your desire is to build community, begin by truly listening to those who don't trust you and listen to why they don't trust you and be accountable for that, regardless if you were the direct actor or not. There is value to being humble and self-reflective. And I know you have many officers who feel that they individually are good people, and that may be true, but when you all wear the same uniform and no one is held accountable for misdeeds, then you will all have to carry the brunt of that distrust, and you need to reconcile with that. And I mean to include dehumanizing traumatic actions, regardless if they are within your policies or not, because, and this is really important, a lot of your policies do allow for misuse of force and power. And Chief Navarro, I cannot express enough how painful it was to wash tear gas out of the eyes of teenagers this last summer. I cannot express the rage it brought me to see you all blaming.
Thank you very much for your comment. This now concludes the live public comment portion. Before we move on to voicemail public comment, I want to note I can extend until 4 p.m., but we can't go beyond that. So if your comment is not played today, it is because we will lose our quorum at 4 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you please commence with voicemail public comment?
Hello, I'm a longtime resident of Santa Rosa, and I'm calling about the agenda item regarding the Blue Line Flag Facebook post. On March 31st, 2020, the Santa Rosa Police Department mourned the loss of one of their own, Mary Lou Armour, who died from complications due to COVID-19. Santa Rosa residents and the surrounding community mourned with them. In the Tubbs fire, as well as subsequent fires over these last few years, we praised our police officers for their sacrifice and service as they left their homes and their families to serve our communities and save lives. We made signs and taped them to fences. We cheered for them and thanked them. How quickly we forget. In recent events, it has become apparent that the mayor and city council may have pressured the Santa Rosa Police Department to remove a photo of a thin blue line flag that was gifted to them in support of their service. I am saddened and disappointed that our community leaders feel that the opinions of the community they represent have become so divisive that we cannot post a picture of a flag which is meant to support those who keep us safe on a daily basis and commemorate officers like Mary Lou who have died in so doing. To the mayor and city council, I implore you to represent the majority of citizens in Santa Rosa who respect and support the Santa Rosa Police Department.
Hello there. I'm calling to leave feedback on the Blue Line Flag post removal item on the Public Safety Subcommittee on Wednesday. My name is Kenneth Clark. I've been a Santa Rosa resident for 11 years, living in Rincon Valley, and it's a beautiful part of the country, unlike any other. I would hate to see it spoiled, but unfortunately what I've been seeing in our city is that it's significantly losing its shine. The level of homelessness is disgusting, allied with the crime that comes along with it. Last year itself was shocking for Santa Rosa. To have riots and see local businesses demolished. These things are something I thought I'd never see here in Santa Rosa. However, worse than that, if you can imagine it, is the absolute lack of support from the local city government for our police department and the police who are tasked to meet these these issues head on. The Facebook post removal for the thin blue line flag was disgusting. I originally found it hard to even accept that this was something our council actively supported. Chief of Police Ray Navarro and his team have proven themselves to be trustworthy, dependable, and honourable, fulfilling their obligations to the community and the council. The very least the council can do is to provide full support for our first responders and provide them with the necessary funding and staffing levels to do their job properly. It just seems like the council are simply bowing to the liberal progressive agenda from a localised minority of supporters and shockingly agreeing to police defunding and advertising removal of their support for its police officers on social media. This is a dangerous move by local officials and will create issues for our officers on the streets. The council have a responsibility to ensure that we, the public, are protected and the law is upheld. The council have the responsibility to staff our police force with appropriately trained individuals who can teach and train new officers, providing a consistent staffing level appropriate for our growing town into the future. The police force needs to be supported financially and vocally by this council. I implore you to allow the repost of the thin blue line flag and raise awareness for your full support of our officers in this community. I implore you to refund the $1 million that was removed from the budget for this SRPD, and I implore you to allow staffing levels of the police to be increased to account for future attrition and aging out of the current police officers to teach and train new recruits as needed for the future. The current trajectory for our officers with the current lack of city support is such that all our officers will either age out or leave, and Santa Rosa will be left with no tenable force to protect the city or its citizens. Please do not let the council's current lack of support for our police department become the beginning of the end for our city. Thank you for your time.
Yes, I am calling to provide input on the police staffing study session. My name is Kelly Allers. I am a resident and homeowner in Santa Rosa for the last 6 years. I love our community. I have great confidence in the police force and staff and the sheriff's department. I'm in support of Chief Navarro and the rest of the officers who continue to do their work every day and keep us safe. And I want to continue to support them and make sure that they are funded to do the work that keeps our community safe. Thank you.
My name is Barbara Bowie, and I'm calling about agenda item 6.5. I've worked for the city of Santa Rosa for the past 2 decades. I'm calling to say how appalled and embarrassed I am at our city council for reportedly forcing the police department to remove a Facebook post depicting a thin blue line banner and then having them issue a public apology. A banner that was given to the police department as a thank you gift for their dedicated service to the community in which I work and live. I hold our police department in the highest regard, and for Santa Rosa council members to take such an unnecessary action is shameful. This thin blue line was the symbol that was represented when Detective Mary Lou Armour was taken away from the community last March. I don't remember the police department removing that social media post. What was so different about that post? Council, how dare you disparage her name and all the other men and women who have sacrificed their lives for their communities? Please show some respect for those that protect you. I refuse to call any of you city leaders, as none of you have demonstrated any leadership qualities. How can you effectively run a city without publicly supporting your police department? Chief Navarro was hired for a reason. Let him run his department. If the council members are in the mood to publicly remove things, why don't you start with Garbage Man? Council member Eddie Alvarez. In what world does a city council member publicly refer to their police department as trash? Yes, Eddie, your community has seen your social media posts and your edited version too. When do we get to see your heartfelt public apology? I'm guessing you won't be forced to do that. Council, if you want to do something effective for our police department, how about you ensure that they have the resources they need to do a good job to protect their community? Or maybe something as simple as publicly thanking them for the difficult job they're doing. As the saying goes, praise in public and criticize in private. Maybe you all should give it a try. I want to thank the Santa Rosa Police Department for all their hard work, and I fully support the thin blue line.
Hi, my name is Kelly, and I'm calling in regards to agenda item 6.5. I'm the wife of a Santa Rosa PD officer, and I'm extremely angry and embarrassed by the way the City Council is treating and trash-talking some of the hardest-working men and women I've ever had the pleasure to know. These men and women have dedicated their lives to helping others within the City of Santa Rosa and deserve far more respect than you guys are giving them. My husband has had a very successful career with the Santa Rosa Police Department, and he loves what he does. He goes to work every day not knowing if he'll come home that night, but he does it to keep you and the city safe. Lately, the morale at the station has been at an all-time low due to the media's push of hate for law enforcement, and the hate stems as deep as your own city council members, and that's just absolutely disturbing. Just yesterday, your very own Mr. Eddie Alvarez made a public post on Facebook to which a follower replied, "SRPD is trash," and Mr. Alvarez replied, in quotes, "I won't deny." The City Council is elected by the people of the city and therefore are expected to be held to a higher standard. Mr. Alvarez's behavior and his comments is embarrassing and downright disturbing. I am baffled this man holds a seat on the City Council, and I highly encourage all of you who sit next to him to ask yourself, is this the kind of person I want to associate myself with, and am I proud of the way he chooses to represent the City of Santa Rosa? Let's talk about the word trash for a second, since Mr. Alvarez seems to think these men and women at Santa Rosa PD are of such. My husband has seen more in his life on time on patrol than I'm sure all of you guys have combined. My husband has comforted fathers and mothers while they've held their dead child. He has placed his own fingers into a gunshot wound to save someone from bleeding out. He has saved so many men and women from domestic situations, some of which still reach out to thank him or update him on their life currently. He has sat on scene of many homicides and murders and has sat with a woman who had a medical emergency while driving, and all he could do was comfort her while she passed right in front of him. The list goes on. My husband has received many awards and recognition for his hard work while with Santa Rosa PD. He has missed many holidays, birthdays, and celebrations. He works days, nights, swings, weekends, on call, and at times he will go a week or more without a single day off. He attends trainings on his days off to be the best officer he can. And Mr. Alvarez, this is the man you're referring to as trash. Not to detract from the original issue at hand here, which is the thin blue line flag that was kindly donated to Santa Rosa PD. The flag is a symbol in a way we honor the men and women who have paid the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. The thin blue line represents these men and women, is the line these men and women walk every single day to protect society from anarchy. This is a symbol we proudly fly in our home in a way we honor the hard work my husband does. It is the way we honor and respect a friend of my husband's who gave her life in the line of duty. It is the way we honor all of my husband's fallen brothers and sisters. I've seen my husband at more than one occasion come home from a fallen officer's funeral in tears, and I know what that symbolism behind the thin blue line means to him and every single officer. I would encourage each and every one of our City Council members to research into the true meaning of the thin blue line flag and what it represents before making such rash decisions in the future. There is not a single symbol in the world that someone could not find a reason or a way to be offended by. What the thin blue line represents is far bigger than
Hi, my name's Sharon Bailey. I called earlier, but I did not put the agenda. So this is Agenda 3, the police staffing study session, and I will just repeat what I said. My name's Sharon Bailey. I live in Santa Rosa for 43 years. I love our city, and I'm grateful for all you who serve. Thank you. But I'm so disappointed in the lack of support for the Santa Rosa police officers from our city council and the city manager. I'm asking that you refund the $1 million to the police department budget, hire more officers to keep our community safe, and pay our officers appropriately. The safety of our community depends upon it. I ask and I urge you that our city council and city managers start to support public safety. Please remember you represent us. I ask you to hear our plea. Why would an officer work for a city that fails to support them? Why? Please get some backbone. And let's do the right thing and support the men and women who lay down their life for us. Your work is not laying down your life, nor is my work. So let's appreciate those who do. I get the Nextdoor app, and every time I read a police report, if the officer leaves his email, I email them back. Subject line, thank you. And then with a short note to say, please disregard the hate of the mainstream media and know the majority of this town wants and we need you. I thank them for their service and for making our city a safe place. And you know what? The majority of them send me back a quick little note saying thank you for your kind words. So please take care of our police so they can do their job. We all reap the benefits, and we are the people that support you, and we are the ones paying our taxes. Again, thank you for your service to our community, and thank you for listening to the people of Santa Rosa, California. Thank you a lot again, Sharon Bailey.
Hello, my name is Matt Bogue. This message is in regards to the City Council Public Safety Subcommittee meeting on January 27th, and specifically the Blue Line Flag social media post. I live in Rincon Valley. I have raised my family here in Santa Rosa and have been a Sonoma County resident for the majority of my life. My neighborhood has seen an uptick of property crime in the past few months. I have been a victim of this crime twice recently, and 100% support the police that have come and helped me. We need to have law and order and security in our city. If people don't feel safe, they will leave. Please do not take any more financial support away from our vital police services, and restore any funding that you have previously taken away. Our police officers need more funding, not less. Security must be a top priority of our city council. We, the people of Santa Rosa, will be watching your actions, and we will remember when it comes time for re-election. All of my friends and family 100% support our police officers. Remember, people that want security and support police officers are the majority. Don't cave in to the demands of a vocal minority. The Blue Line flag only shows support of the law. We love Ray Navarro as our police chief, and we do not appreciate when he is made to feel that he can't show support for his own officers out there putting their lives on the line to protect us. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shannon DeMond, and I'm calling to support our Santa Rosa City Police. And we feel that they're very crucial and important to the safety of our town as well as our schools. And I'm just calling to see what we can do about supporting the continued staff and the necessary solutions for our city to remain safe, as well as their presence at schools. And if you have any questions, please feel free to give me a call. Again, we're very thankful for our police presence in the community and in stores and schools and events and all the following. And we would like to continue seeing the support from our city for our Santa Rosa police. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I'm calling about the police staffing study session. My name is Joe Bertacco. I've lived in Cobblestone above the old county hospital for 16 years and in Santa Rosa for 67 years. My family's been here since 1882 on one side and 1925 on the other. I'm just calling. I want to make sure our police officers are taken care of. The funding is given to them. I know there was a cut made. Back in June, I sent a letter to our district representative. She knows who she is. The police chief and our mayor received response from Chief Navarro only. Up here in Cobblestone, we're faced with constant homeless issues because of the hospital. And it's just, I just feel sorry for the police nowadays because they work so hard and get no respect. I've been in this town, known many police officers, sheriffs, and city cops I went to school with and grew up with, and they were all great guys. And it just upsets me now to be seeing what these cops are going through now, and all they're trying to do is do their job. I just appreciate the city council if they would stop trying to defund the police. And I think there is a silent majority. I know people hate to hear that, but a silent majority out here who really doesn't like the way Santa Rosa is going. It used to be the city designed for living, and it's no longer that way. The homeless issues, I mean, you meet people now. Somebody recently said, go down Industrial. It's a mess. I drove down Industrial just to see, and it was a mess. So the cops are, I just feel like their hands are tied. I know the city council denies it, but I know for a fact they are. So please help the police. Give them the money they need. I know you took money because of minority groups are complaining about the police, defund the police by Antifa, Black Lives Matter. We don't want the police defunded. So I'm just calling to let you know that. And I hope you listen to the people of Santa Rosa. Thank you.
Hi, this is Gary Olson calling. I'm calling in regards to the police staffing study session. I've lived in the Rincon Valley area of Santa Rosa for the last 20 years, and I wanted to voice my displeasure of the lack of support that Santa Rosa police officers are getting from both the city manager and the city council. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I find it very hard to believe that police officers working without the support of the city manager and city council makes their job extremely difficult. I'm also asking that you refund the $1 million or reallocate the $1 million that was taken away from the police department's budget, which has shown a decrease in the staff, and hire more officers to keep our community safe. The safety of Santa Rosa depends on it. And I also am asking/demanding that city council and the city manager especially start to support public safety. It's why we live where we live. Again, my name's Gary Olson, and I appreciate the opportunity to voice my opinion.
Good evening. I am calling regarding agenda item 6.5 on the thin blue line flag post and issues surrounding that. So over the past year, I've watched what's been happening around our community and even as far as San Francisco, and I've honestly thought to myself how lucky I am to live in this community and away from the politics of other counties where police officers are afraid to do their jobs and fear being charged criminally just for going to work. It seems that Santa Rosa PD has always been a step above that and one of the most professional organizations in the region. I've formed a lot of friendships with officers and have heard of the horrible morale they suffer from at work every day. Frankly, given the events I've seen unfold over the past week, I'm considering moving away from Santa Rosa, and I'm not sure that I want to live in a community where our city council members do not openly support the hardest working men and women in the entire city. The thin blue line flag post that was made on the department's Facebook was not offensive to the silent majority of us who quietly and humbly support and appreciate the hard work and sacrifices that your police officers make every day in the city. It was pretty offensive that the chief took down the post to his officers and other officers. It was disrespectful to Mary Lou, the officer who gave her life to the city. It was almost more offensive that he felt compelled to issue an apology to the same people who just a few months ago were smashing windows downtown in a lawless rampage that forced hardworking citizens to pay for and clean the disaster that they left behind. Those people don't need an apology. How about this? Where's the apology from City Council member Eddie Alvarez? A citizen comments on his Facebook post that SRPD is trash, and he responds, "I won't deny." That's completely unacceptable behavior and disgusting. How could the City Council demand that the Chief of Police issue a pathetic and embarrassing apology to some anarchists while their own members are trash-talking the hardest-working employees in the city with no recourse? I've seen at least one response that Alvarez sent to an email where he acted as though he was the victim and didn't even apologize or accept any responsibility for his hurtful words. If the chief was pressured by the city council to take down the thin blue line flag, perhaps the city council should step up and accept responsibility for their role. Making the chief to be the face of evil while council members or the city manager hides in the shadows, unwilling to face the officers who they are openly disrespectful, is a poor leadership strategy. I'd be curious how the city council would feel if SRPD officers started openly posting on their own social media accounts that city council members were trash. We know exactly what would happen. Officers would be ordered to take down the posts, investigated internally, and punished for violating one of the many policies that I read online under the transparent page on the SRPD website. There's a word that comes to mind when I consider all of this: hypocrisy. Your council has demonstrated to the officers in the community a leadership style of do what I say and not what I do. Frankly, they're police officers. They arrest people. Everyone's not going to like them every day, but they work hard. Thank you for your time.
I am calling to provide input for the police staffing study session. My name is Lisa Olson, and I have lived in Santa Rosa for the past 20 years and Sonoma County for 23 years. I just wanted to say I'm so disappointed in the lack of support for the Santa Rosa police officers from our city council and the city manager. I am asking that you refund $1 million to the police department budget, hire more officers to keep our community safe, and pay our officers appropriately. The safety of our community depends upon it. I demand that our city council and city manager start to support public safety. Why would an officer want to work for a city that fails to support them? Again, my name is Lisa Olson, and I just wanted to call and voice my support. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Robert Cantrell, and I am a citizen of Santa Rosa, and I would like to provide input on agenda item number 3, and I think it said it's 3.1, and I'm calling to provide some input for the police staffing study session. I've lived in Rincon Valley for over 20 years now, and I am very supportive of the Santa Rosa Police Department and the safety and security that they have provided to us here in Santa Rosa. And I would really like our city council and our city manager to provide support and to provide some encouragement to our police officers and to our police department who have been through some very, very challenging and difficult times, very difficult to navigate. I'm also asking specifically that you restore the budget to the full amount. It's my understanding that you have reduced their budget by $1 million. What the specifics are, I'm not sure, but I would like to ask that you would restore their budget so that they can maintain the proper staffing and the proper police department officer count so that they can continue to take good care of our safety and security. The safety of our community is very important, obviously, to me, and I know it is to you. And I would really ask you all on the city council and our city manager to continue to do everything you can to support public safety. And I don't really think that that means that we would defund the police department and reduce the number of officers. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for your service to our city.
Hi, I am calling about the staffing and the cutback of our police department.
Madam Zoom host, can we pause the public comment, please?
In Santa Rosa, I live in the JC neighborhood.
I'm noticing that a lot of these comments are not in any type of reference to item 5.2, but are in reference to the staffing study that was heard. So I'm wondering if we can move past those ones to the, given our limited time, to the items for the at hand. Thank you.
Okay, some of these are from, they were added from our meeting last week, and I don't have any way of knowing which ones are which without playing them.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
And I am absolutely sick and tired of the unbelievable amount of damage and vandalism and theft that is rampant in our, which used to be a very nice neighborhood in the city of Santa Rosa. This is almost unbelievable. I am tired of sitting at stoplights and watching 2, 3, 4 cars go through because running through on red lights because there are not enough officers as it is to stop any kind of traffic violations. I'm tired of being, every time I call the police department, it's like, we don't have an officer to come out unless it's an emergency. This has to stop. The city designed for living is no more designed for living, period. And I mean, period. My family of, 3 kids and all their husbands, wives, and children are all looking to move out of Santa Rosa, out of California, but especially out of Santa Rosa because they can also no longer stand the amount of people creeping around your houses at night. I've had prowlers in my backyard. I've had to lock my garage because people have gone in my garage. I mean, it's enough is enough. And the fact that people in the city chose to cut back on the budget for policemen. We're so short-staffed anyway, as I understand it. I don't know how you could possibly cut back. Anyway, my voice is to get some money back into the police department, hire as many officers as it takes so that we can actually live in a safe environment in this city again, or you will lose. The tax base alone is going to have to kill you guys. I tell you, I don't know how you're going to be able to support any salaries at all when all these the people who work and pay taxes will leave the city. So I hope you listen because you need to listen. And thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Shannon Demont.
I am calling to provide input for the police staffing study session. My name is Tati.
Hi, I'm calling to provide input for the police staffing study session. My name is Kelly DeVries, and I've lived in
Hello, I'm a longtime resident of Santa Rosa, and I'm calling about the agenda item regarding the Blue Line Flag Facebook post. On March 31st, 2020, the Santa Rosa Police Department mourned the loss of one of their own, Mary Lou Armour, who died from complications due to COVID-19. Santa Rosa residents and the surrounding community mourned with them. In the Tubbs fire, as well as subsequent fires over these last few years, we praised our police officers for their sacrifice and service as they left their homes and their families to serve our communities and save lives. We made signs and taped them to fences. We cheered for them and thanked them. How quickly we forget. In recent events, it has become apparent that the mayor and city council may have pressured the Santa Rosa Police Department to remove a photo of a thin blue line flag that was gifted to them in support of their service. I am saddened and disappointed that our community leaders feel that the opinions of the community they represent have become so divisive that we cannot post a picture of a flag which is meant to support those who keep us safe on a daily basis and commemorate officers like Mary Lou who have died in so doing. To the mayor and city council, I implore you to represent the majority of citizens in Santa Rosa who respect and support the Santa Rosa Police Department.
Used our dog whistle to call up our dogs to make comments in support of the police officers. I don't believe anybody I know is a dog. I also don't feel that just because you live in a certain area of Santa Rosa makes you a racist, which is something else that Ms. Fleming alluded to. I would like to say that there were many people who called and commented and didn't say where they lived who are in support of the police officers. I'm open to hear everyone's concerns and everyone's thoughts on this process, but I think just as there should be no bias with the police officers, there should also be no bias with our city council people, and to have a clear and open mind to everything. These are officers that were highly regarded. I don't think they're any different today that they were 3 years ago. I think they still hold up and do a great job for our community. Many of them long to get to know their community, to help their community. This is what they do. They've done this for years. They have put family things on hold for their community, and they continue to do that. Thank you, and have a good night.
Hello, my name is Manuel, and I'm calling regarding agenda item 5.2, the Thin Blue Line. And I'm calling to voice my support for the Thin Blue Line, and in particular to denounce Victoria Fleming's comments about the flag or anybody who supports that flag as being racist. Looking at the recent past, you see people like Natalie Corona, Mary Lou Armour, and most recently Sacramento Deputy Adam Gibson, whose funeral the flag flew center stage behind the podium. This flag doesn't represent what people who demonize it tend to make it out to be, those who are trying to deconstruct the flag and deconstruct law enforcement. It means what it means to the people whom it represents, which is law enforcement, which means the ultimate sacrifice that people like Mary Lou and Natalie and Adam made. It means courage. It means that they're standing between good and evil, and they pay the ultimate price for what they do. So that's what it means to law enforcement, and it's sad to see people like Victoria Fleming demonize it, demonize officers, and demonize anybody who supports them. And so I'd encourage city leadership and city council to have some courage, to stand up for your troops, to stand up for the people who are doing their best to protect the city, and to support them as best you can. Thank you.
Wanted to help. My name is Greg, and I'm calling regarding the Thin Blue Line flag. I think it's 5.2. And I am a city employee, and my brother was killed in the line of duty. And the Thin Blue Line flag is a representation of the honor that he had for giving his life to the community that he worked for and wanted to be a part of and wanted to help. It gives us support as family and survivors from police departments, from ordinary citizens, that we will never forget the officers who've lost their lives in the line of duty. Our officers who have given their lives knew that that could someday happen. And for you guys to show the lack of compassion is truly outstanding and very dismissive of the community members that support us, that want to remember not only my brother, other officers who died, and one of our very own, Mary Lou Hernandez, who gave her life in the line of duty. All their lives are worth remembering. And the way you guys talk and act makes it feel for survivors and those affected that our lives do not matter. And this gift that was given to the police department was a gift from the community. And we should thank the community for that. We should thank our officers and be supportive, because our officers go every part of the city to support any citizen or any person in our city.
My name is Aaron. Agenda item 5.2. I would like to comment on the thin blue line symbol. I have many friends and family that serve in law enforcement. I view the thin blue line flag as a representation of the sacrifices that are made on a daily basis to keep our community safe. I couldn't imagine working in a field where I wasn't sure if I would make it home from work that day because I was called to arrest a violent criminal who didn't want to surrender. A perfect example is the Be on the Lookout that was sent out this week on a real white supremacist who was reported to have an unknown amount of stolen firearms here in the North Bay. We all rely on the police to take care of these tough situations. Nowadays, I think they're taken for granted. I hope we all remember that it hasn't just been the firefighters that work on an insane amount of hours during the last several years of devastating wildfires. Police from all over California have come up here to help protect our property from looters and drive around to alert and assist those who don't have up-to-date technology or people who are unable to evacuate without assistance. I thank you for your time, and I hope you take this into consideration. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Manuel, and I'm calling regarding.
Hi, my name is Laura, and
my name
I'm
is
calling
Greg,
about
and I'm
agenda
calling
item.
regarding the thin blue line
and
flag.
I'm calling to voice my support for the thin blue line.
My name is Aaron. Agenda item 5.2.
This is for item agenda 5.2. My name is Terry, and I live in District 4, Miss Victoria Fleming's district. Our police department deserves the right to display the thin blue line symbol. It represents the countless sacrifices and lives lost in the profession. It represents Sacramento County Deputy Sheriff Adam Gibson's life, who is laid to rest on Wednesday. The larger issue related to the thin blue line symbol is ignorance and prejudice. Some people need to be educated as to what the symbol stands for not what others are making it out to be. The underlying meaning of the symbol is solidarity and professional pride within a dangerous, difficult profession, and a solemn tribute to fallen officers. The fact that some people in society want to morph this symbol into something it is not is wrong. To add additional meanings to a symbol so that it fits an agenda is wrong. The symbol is not a racist symbol or one devised to be divided. It is there to honor and respect those who gave the ultimate sacrifice. Some, like Victoria Fleming, are just plain prejudiced. They see only what they want and ignore the whole. Ms. Fleming has judged all members of law enforcement on a few acts. Ms. Fleming, I live in your district. I am not from Bennett Valley or Rincon Valley. I am in your district, and I would support our law enforcement. How can you spew hatred and ignorance about those who called in support of law enforcement? Racist? Dogs? And at the same time, you completely discounted the Latinos who called in support of law enforcement. You, Ms. Fleming, are part of the problem, not the solution. You and your rhetoric are driving groups apart, not towards a common understanding. You may be my council member, but you do not represent me.
Yes, this is Bonnie Maloof Goodman calling regarding item 5.2, the thin blue line. I'm a native of Santa Rosa and have witnessed many, many changes. Trying to eliminate the thin blue line is a slap in the face to all law enforcement everywhere. Our community needs to stand behind the Santa Rosa PD. They risk their lives daily for you, and so don't let a handful of thugs dictate their pathetic needs. And that's all it is. We need to stand behind the police department. Support the thin blue line. It's for law enforcement everywhere, their families, the fallen. It just needs to be supported. So please don't respect our police department. Give them your support and keep that thin blue line. I always will. Thank you.
My name is Susan Hall, agenda number 5.2. I'm a native Santa Rosan, and I will support my police department and the thin blue line for fallen officers 100%. These brave people put their lives on the line for us every day. The very least we can do is stand beside them in support. Only a disgusting city council would choose not to honor them and support them in every way. If you have any emergency, who would you want coming to your rescue? I want my Santa Rosa Police Department, not the cowardly city council that hides behind their desks and makes disparaging remarks about a group of brave and dedicated people who protect and service. The mayor, and especially Council Member Victoria Fleming, are a disgrace to this city. They should never hold any office again. I want a council that stands with my police department, honors them and the thin blue line. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tom. I'm calling on agenda item number 5.2, the thin blue line. I just want to start off quickly by reading a brief history or what the definition of what the flag stands for to back up my later comments. The stars and stripes of the American flag are in black and white. There's a blue line that runs underneath the stars, and the stars are representative of the citizenry that the police protect. And then the darkness represents essentially anarchy, chaos, or symbolizes the death of law officers who have perished in the line of duty. I think that's important because nowadays we've seen in the current environment, people have co-opted the symbol or different symbols throughout the nation to either take over or request allies or movements to further push their goals. And we've also seen, the opposition of those entities or groups trying to define what their opposing symbol means to deflect hatred or put unfortunate comments or symbols or meanings towards those people. It's kind of part of the cancel culture. Instead of listening and understanding the two different sides and taking it all in and working for common ground, it's become more of defining symbols as hatred or I guess ways to vilify your enemies. And I'm sorry for kind of stumbling along here. I'm not used to this process, but I just think it's really unfortunate that it's come to this time where a symbol of police officers who have potentially fallen in the line of duty or just what their job is today has now been created or turned into such a unfortunate evil placeholder symbol for the opposition of what the country stands for and law and order. I think that they're important members of society, and I think they're people that need to be treated as such. So I appreciate your time, and thank you for listening.
My name is Peggy, and this is in reference to the Thin Blue Line Agenda 5.2. I'm in support of our law enforcement and the Thin Blue Line symbol. You need to stop thinking that you need to make changes or bow down to others when they are clearly misinformed and want to be offended by just about anything and everything anymore. Enough is enough. It's time to stand up for and support our law enforcement and the Thin Blue Line. The Thin Blue Line represents courage, strength, bravery, and sacrifice. Instead of removing the symbol because a few people are offended, how about instead making a statement to the community and explain the true meaning and what it really does and has always stood for? Show them that we won't allow them the power to disgrace it. We won't allow them to make up new ignorant meanings for symbols that already have an established meaning and purpose, a symbol that has always been positive. By not supporting our officers in the thin blue line, you are contributing to a divide in our community. How do you intend to keep the officers we do have and find more to join SRPD when it's clear you aren't giving them the support that they deserve? Enough.
My name's Jan Cunningham, and I just wanted to comment on the thin blue line being removed, that flag. And I just really appreciate the sensitivity that you guys are taking, especially when it comes to police brutality and white supremacy. I appreciate Santa Rosa. I've lived here my whole life. I'm just really glad that the police chief is taking it seriously. It's a really important topic, and it's something that we all need to be sensitive to because this is a diverse population, and my friends are people of color, and I want to be sensitive to that topic. And you should never change the flag. And I'm really glad that you guys are taking it serious, even though our police are the best. And maybe we don't have as much police brutality here, but we are taking it serious. I'm really proud of our SRPD for doing that. Thank you so much. Bye.
Hi, this is Ryan speaking on item number 5.2. I'm a lifelong Santa Rosa resident. I want to express my support for the Santa Rosa Police Department. I do not believe that it should be defunded at all. Our city is falling apart at the seams with homelessness, low quality of life, violence, and crime. The police department is an integral part of our city, and we need to show them that we love them, and so we support their work. We also need to allow them to do their jobs effectively by giving them the tools, training, and the personnel that they need to do their job. Councilman Victoria Fleming is doing an incredibly poor job in representing her constituency and her city. She knows that we are lucky to have such a hardworking and professional department, and she thinks that they treat anyone with anything but dignity and respect and professionalism, then she needs to go on a ride along and learn the truth. So thank you very much, and I support the Santa Rosa Police Department.
Thank you for all of the public comment. And thank you so much to the Zoom host for adjusting that for us. So we are out of time for today. I ask the city attorney your advice on how we ought to, should we continue this or should we adjourn the meeting? What is the most effective way of stopping in the middle of something?
We've gotten through all the public comments, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Okay, so now it's if the council members want to have an opportunity to discuss, then you should continue it to your next meeting.
Okay, let's continue it then. So with that.
And do we have a date yet for the next meeting, or do you want to simply continue it to the next meeting when that meeting is?
Continue it to the next meeting and take it up when we have an agenda for additional items. I feel like we worked through a lot of this and heard a lot of things, and we can probably move on.
Yes, and I will just note for the public that because the public comment period has been completed, there will not be an additional comment period on this item at the next meeting.
Understood. Thank you. Okay, so with that, having no additional items today, or no additional time today, rather, I adjourn this meeting of the Public Safety Subcommittee. Thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.